Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony. I'm the chair of the Committee on Finance. Following the order of regular meeting on Thursday, June 13th at 5:36 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chairwoman Anthony.
Present.
Vice Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Endelman.
Here.
Councilwoman Graves.
Yeah.
Councilor Sanchez.
Here.
Five present, no absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. So tonight we're joined by Susanna Solnick from the city solicitor office. We have Council President Rachel Miller here. We have Councilor Pinal, Coach Patriarchal. We have Councilor Vargas joining us this evening. Thank you very much. We have our chief of staff here in the rooms. We have our senior director of policy, Karen Mr. Gardner, and we have our Madam Clerk who is trying and getting me copies something to that lost. So thank you all for coming. We have very many distinguished guests. Tonight we are going to start with our budget. I'm happy to say we're at the end of the process, which is very exciting. So I'm going to ask for both of you to read agenda items 1 through motion made by Councilor Graves, seconded by Councilor Taylor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. And I am going to ask President Miller and all the way for chief of staff roads, and maybe we'll have others to talk about what we're doing on the
Sure. Madam Chair, do you want to do the substitution first?
Yes, thank you for.
You're so welcome.
We're going to be selling our so I don't know if we have profit and emoji. This item.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Vanderbilt, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. Thank you for that reminder.
Not a problem. It's very exciting that we have a substitution to make. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone on this committee and the councilors who joined, who aren't on this committee, but joined pretty faithfully throughout the budget process, for a really thorough review of the budget. You spent many hours, had really good conversations, many of which were like policy implementation conversations about how various city departments are doing work on behalf of our residents, and it was well done. I really appreciate all of the counselors' advocacy for our students in the Providence Public Schools, and of course we heard the same at the hearing. And there's a few things I just want to share about the increased allocation. So the increased $2.5 million to Providence Public Schools on top of what Mayor Smiley had already proposed as an increase. So as a total, it's an increase of $5.5 million to Providence Public Schools in the budget before you. That is the largest increase to our public schools in more than 15 years, which is as far back as we could easily do the research. And I think there's a few things. So one, the budget as proposed back in April from Mayor Smiley was a strong budget without a lot of flexibility, right? There wasn't a lot of like fat to cut from the budget. So I really appreciate the mayor and the finance team here with us tonight, Sarah and Crystal and Larry Mancini, for working with us to find that money, right? Because we were able to do it without making cuts to kind of vital city services, especially the stormwater allocations that, we know every time it rains, it's a new level of crisis in our city. So we were able to find this money without making any big cuts to community facing services, but it was still like, a painful conversation, and we got there because this council was united in it. There's other pieces to the puzzle though, and I think we're all aware of them. I just want to keep them like top of mind, right? So there's an ongoing conversation, and I worry that conversation that's not happening, that's happening outside of this building is not centered on our students, but is more centered on a something political that's happening on a state level. And so I want us to just be clear, this allocation is going towards student facing, student supportive services. And I think we're united with that. I appreciate the commitment from Providence Public School Department to do that. That's important to all of us. That's important to everyone who came to testify, and in support of themselves, right? Because we heard from a lot of great students and also families and others. And I think, as we kind of work together with PPSD and with the school board, and there's been some ideas floated about doing a joint meeting this fall, which I think is a truly wonderful idea. I'm looking forward to working together with that. Like, we need to just operate in a place that is, and I know we will, this is how we've been for the last year and a half, that is outside, that is like truly student first facing. You know what I mean? So we're thinking about, we're going to have to make our decisions continuously. We're going to need to do it in a way that supports the best possible outcomes for students and their families and the teachers who teach in the schools. So I'm really proud that we were able to work together with the administration, with Mayor Smiley, that we were able to do it because counselors were united for this effort. And like I said, it's a historic PPSD allocation. And I'm going to turn it over to and thank June Rose for their efforts in negotiating on our behalf, and Gina Costa, our internal auditor, as well as Aaron Eastergardner. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to June to just go do a little bit of a rundown on what how we got to the 2.5 million, and I'm sure the finance team would also weigh in if needed.
Yes. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Madam Chair. Excited to run through these for all of you. I also have the auditor with me to definitely provide some backup, and will at the end turn to the finance team to ask what I missed, and they'll chime in as well, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So the things that we negotiated into the budget from the mayor's proposed budget were the 2.5 million we have discussed to PPSD, and that is by far the biggest ticket item. Everything else is considerably smaller. We have added 2 positions in municipal court, which will allow them to do their job in the most fair and inclusive way possible, and also fulfill DOJ requirements. And that is a court interpreter and a public defender. We have given a grant of $125,000 to the Woonasquatucket Rivershed Greenway. We have increased the grant to City Year. They have $50,000 in the mayor's proposed budget. We've increased that by $50,000 for a total of $100,000 grant. We have added a new position in the city clerk's office, a special projects manager, who is going to help with a lot of the incoming, and I think will be a great addition to that office. And then we have 2 small raises in the auditor's office, internal auditor's office, as well as a salary correction, as a corrected error in the city council office for our project management associate, who is being promoted to project manager. So those are all the additions. And then in terms of changes to help fund those, the largest one was increasing our tax collection rate from a projected 94% to 94.25%, which will free up about almost $1 million. And then we are moving the start, or are going to have the police department move the start date of their academy. So right now in the proposed budget, it's funded at 13 weeks. It's a 16-week academy. We're going to ask them to start the academy on May 5th. That way we'll fund 8 weeks of the academy in this coming fiscal year, and then the second to 8 weeks in the following fiscal year 26. There was an increase in public property repair to buildings of $100,000. We do not have that in the current version of the budget. The HR administration had a new line item this year for $60,000 for advertising. That line item is now just 30,000 as opposed to 60. In treasury, there is a banking fees line item of $450,000 that is reduced by $100,000 to 350,000, which is a comfortable amount to pay for what we need to for banking fees. There were a whole bunch of salary adjustments and positions eliminated that were funded but vacant, that we made a lot of hard decisions, but just want to be clear, no filled position was eliminated. There were vacant positions that we've eliminated and some salary adjustments, some raises that were in that we're not going to be able to do in order to make all this possible. And the finance department was able to find $270,000 in debt service reduction on projects that I believe have not started yet. But wait a second.
We had some funds on deposit on our master lease that is closing out this year, which is reducing the payment we owe for fiscal year 2025 by $270,000.
And without getting into the details of all the salary adjustments, which I can, if folks want, I believe that is everything. That's it.
How detailed is it?
I can do it.
I'm more interested, not salary adjustment necessarily. Well, I feel like we could just go in detail of the salary adjustments. And the positions.
Yeah, I can speak to all the vacant positions that have been eliminated, and then for remaining salary adjustments, I might turn to my left. So vacant positions that are being eliminated. One is a new position, Director of Talent and Development, I believe is the full name. That's in HR. It's part of the HR reorg. Manager of Fiscal Operations and Commissioner's Office. There are 4 vacant senior city solicitors. So we are eliminating 1 of those 4. There will still be 3 vacant. In public property, there's a clerk 4 that is eliminated. Public Works Administration, there's a new position, Community Liaison, that is eliminated. Quality Control Specialist in Communications Department. I believe that is all of them. Anything I'm saying, there are still salary adjustments.
Yeah, would you like me to be sworn in?
Please grab your chair right now.
Okay.
Sorry, that's how you grab it. Really, you should have-
Oh, that's okay, no problem, Madam Chair. Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Please bear with me. I do. Please state your names and titles for the record. Crystal Lindbergh, Deputy Finance Director and Budget Officer. Sarah Secretary, Finance Director.
Alex Francine, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, perfect. And you did the Manager of Fiscal Operations, right? Just, okay, perfect. So the last remaining position that is vacant and defunded is an intake coordinator in the para department. Which was a recommendation of the Executive Director of para. The remaining salary adjustments were primarily for changes in staff between when the proposed budget was submitted and now. For example, we had a handful of police officers retire since the proposed budget was submitted. We went through and reduced the salaries for those officers in fiscal year 2025. I also went through every single funded position and updated salaries for known turnover. So if there was a person in the position that they were at step 5 and I know they departed the city, I reduced their salary back down to step 1 to try to button that salary line up as much as I can. But that was the primary driver for the remaining changes that the chief did not elaborate on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
I am going to open it up for questions from any members. Any questions? Let's start a conversation.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Finance team. Thank you, Chief Staff. Thank you, Council President Miller. for your information so far. First question is in regards to, I know there was a question regarding the police officers count. And there was a concern that there was some room in there for possible lateral transfers, something that for at least conversations I've had, council members are pretty opposed to. Is that numbers, are those numbers still in there? Have those numbers been adjusted at all?
So the proposed budget did not have funding specifically for lateral transfers. What we do with the police and fire budgets are we assume that everybody who is on the current payroll plus any academy enrollees will be on the payroll in all of fiscal year 2025. We do know that there are some officers that are going to be retired. However, because we haven't budgeted any of their severance, which can be very significant dollars, we provide a conservative approach of budgeting 100% of those officers' salary all year long. So there is no additional funding in this budget for lateral transfers or lateral academies. We have budgeted the salaries for our officers the same way we have budgeted them every year I've proposed this budget.
So just to confirm,
Yeah.
thank you. So there will be no police laterals or something during this school year.
I can't provide clarification on how the chief of police runs and operates his department. What I can tell you is that in the budget, there is no additional salaries to fund lateral employees. We have budgeted 100% of the salaries for the officers that are on our payroll as of today.
So I mean, kind of what I'm understanding, just to be clear, is that there is a possibility that there will be, can be police laterals.
That is my understanding.
Just want to make sure.
That would be correct. It's going to be listening with us mistake. Yes,
I can make a recommendation and you can put an addendum in one of the ordinances and say that you don't want lateral transfers in the sworn positions.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I don't know if it's necessary. I think it's clear that council members have that opinion. So I mean, I don't know, that's a conversation you have with the administration or the police chief directly. But I just want to make sure that that's on record, with all of us.
there any other questions? Do you have other questions?
I do have one more question. Thank you. My last question is something that came to my attention today. It's pretty discouraging, at least with the information that I have right now. So in the ordinances regarding pay grade and salaries that was given to us in April did not have a mayor's salary on there. And this new red line version does have the mayor's salary on there, and it does look like there is an increase in salary from the mayor. So I guess my two questions would be, why wasn't that included in the first ordinance? And the second question would be, why is the mayor getting a salary that's above, from my understanding, the recommended amount, the approved amount by the salary review commission?
So as for why it was not in the proposed ordinance, I made a mistake, quite frankly. It should have been. And part of what I was doing, as you can see, there are quite a few technical corrections. For example, assistant is now spelled out where it was previously abbreviated. So most of my day yesterday was going through and making technical corrections, one of which was putting the mayor back in the ordinance. So that was certainly not intentional. As for the increase, that increase is representative of the 3% cost of living increase that is granted to all full-time Class A employees, and has been how I have updated the ordinances or intended to update the ordinances since I've been proposing the budget. I know the internal auditor has brought this matter to our attention today and we're investigating it, but at this point in time, you know, I have processed these ordinances in the way I have always handled them. And the fact that it was missing from the proposed ordinance really was just an honest mistake.
So Crystal, just to confirm, you know, what was the mayor's exact salary, before the 3% raise? And what is the approved amount by the salary commission now?
The approved amount by the salary review commission is $150,000. I do not have my ordinance book for last year in front of me right now. Let me see if I can get it on the website.
Salary,
Yeah, do you have the current salary?
the current salary of mayor is $157,207.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
$157,207. $157,207.
I mean, that's where, I guess, my question,
Yes, please.
I guess that's where there's a little bit of confusion, is that from 157 to 158, it's a 3% increase.
Yeah, so Councilman, I will have to most likely go back and double check the numbers on all of this. Again, these ordinances were done in a faster fashion than I would have liked to do them. So I will need to come back to this and we can amend it on the floor if necessary.
I appreciate that, Crystal, and I know you really do try your best, but I mean, just in terms of how this looks to the public, right now. And I really do genuinely believe that it was an honest mistake on your behalf, Crystal. We don't include it in the original ordinance, and then it comes to us in this red ordinance, and there's an increase. And I mean, just even if it was $1,000 increase, in my opinion, I have an issue with it. The challenge is that the residents of Providence are living through right now. And we're giving our own mayor salary increase when we know that the mayor's healthy when it comes to personal finances. So that alone, I have a big issue with right now. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a way to amend it here in committee or propose a change to put it back to where it was, but that's something that I would be interested in hearing if possible.
Are you also close to 3% increase?
I mean, that's what's kind of confusing. We don't really know what, I mean, I'm really opposed to any increase that's reflected in this new version when we didn't have the position listed and to begin with. And maybe that's on us for not catching it and seeing it, but this is where we're at now. And that's kind of what I'm doing.
Well, if it's appropriate, we certainly can amend, agree to amend that. That really request. I don't know if it would be proper to say that he's not entitled to the 3%. We can ask that it doesn't correct. That is satisfactory.
I mean, I guess my next question would be why do we have a salary review commission then if we don't listen to it?
And we can have that going forward, we've had it for many years. Yes, Chief, do you have something to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the council. So following the concern raised by the Internal Audit Office and the review of the ordinances that appeared by the Deputy Director of Finance, the administration reached out to the solicitor. And I'm certain he can confirm this to anyone in the council, but he wrote, consistent with past patent practice, the approved salary for the mayor for the city compensation ordinance should be within the salary amount approved by the most recent salary review commission report, plus whatever COLA increase, if any, may have been granted to all full-time Class A employees. So I believe his opinion has provided that comfort or confirmation, if not guidance, as to how that occurred. So the last salary, I mean, bear in mind, the salary review commission, when it approves a change in compensation for elected officials, it cannot take effect until the following term. So in the case of Mayor Smiley, that change in his compensation a year ago was the change that was approved by the Salary Review Commission during the Alonzo term, which could not be given to Mayor Alonzo because it applied the next term. Last year being the first year of Mayor Smiley's first term, he was granted that compensation plus last year's cost of living increase to all Class A employees, which I believe was 2.5%. That's how that changed to the 157. And then from there, the finance team working from that, under that reasonable presumption, increased it by the 3%. As to the omission in the documents, bear in mind, even in the compensation agreement, the mayor's budget is an all-in number and does not disclose all the detail. I think that's part of that reason as well. And I'm happy to answer additional questions.
I appreciate that. And so I ask again, deputy director is the figure here would be currently there is the accurate figure.
This is the figure when I took what was in the fiscal 2022 or 2024 ordinance and added 3% that I got to. I would like to have an opportunity to look at a couple years worth of ordinances because this is a discussion point that has come up every couple of years and there's no real clear documentation of what the correct procedure is, which is what we're attempting to do now. So if the committee would be amenable, I would like to be able to report back with an updated number if necessary, when I've had a moment to prove a couple years worth of changes.
Thank you, Council President.
Yeah, and I think it would be useful to hear from the internal auditor on like how past practice has been implemented, because I think we've got the most history in the room here.
So I'll go back to the Cicilline administration. When he tried to get a COLA, he had to pay it back. We went back to the Cicilline administration and he got an increase, he had to pay it back. Tavares took a voluntary 10% pay decrease when he came into office. Alonzo tried, Alonzo thought, I don't say what he thought, when he received an increase, his pay went down. I did a payroll run of Laza and he did not get the COLA as the 1033 Class A got an increase. So I don't know what past practice it was, unless last year was a mistake. I don't know. Do we continue with the mistake and grant it? Or do we follow the salary review board? Because the judges they didn't get a 3% increase. The chair people of other committees don't get an increase. Now, if it's fair across the board, I'm okay with it, but why would one person and not everybody else get the increase as well? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that is my response. That's.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Madam. Yes, go ahead.
And one last thing, if his salary is 157, I know you didn't base it, never mind, she didn't base it on his current salary.
I was looking at the
Based it on-
ordinance yesterday.
Okay, so we're gonna
Go.
look at that.
So, we've got very opinions, including a legal opinion. I don't want this to go up our budget. This is a suggestion, Council President.
Madam Chair, I believe we can make cleanup amendments on the floor. So
Okay, well then, I would suggest that we amend this item, the mayor's salary, for the, deputy director, to sort this out, and if you would mind conferring with, I would appreciate it. Yes, and, then we can amend on the if necessary.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the accommodation.
Oh, we appreciate your hard work. Any other questions? Yes, not for very.
I wanted to know, because drawback is for this. It's 5.5 million. It's not in the air with 20 million dollars tax, or what, where else is the native money, where else are they going to get funds for that? I understand it's public money. So. This is 5.5 million.
I'm happy to speak to that a little bit just from our perspective. So this is a little bit what I was speaking to at the beginning of the meeting. There's been a lot of numbers floated around. Most recently, we got a letter from CPSD citing an $11 million funding gap. Now, the General Assembly happily rejected some education cuts, and so there's a increase in $11 million going to PPSD. Not all, some of that was already budgeted, So of that increase, I've heard that 3 million is new funding, that's going to PPSD. We're adding 5.5 million in new funding. That gets us to 8.5. Since the takeover and for the first time, since the takeover of the state, and for the first time, PPSD has been holding a reserve account in addition to the city's rainy day funds. So in local schools, yeah, it's interesting though, because local school departments across the state don't do this. It would be like, someone used the example, right, of like the planning department of the city having its own rainy day fund separate from the city's reserve accounts. And so at least for my part, we're getting to 8.5 million of the 11 million deficit between the state and the city. We're getting to 8.5 million of the of the cited deficit that PPSD has shared. And I'm really calling on the PPSD to go the rest of the way with the reserve account.
Any other questions? Any questions from other questions? Oh, okay. Well, I thank you very much. I think we need to may I interview you? So that's all right. The budget has what you measure for Taylor, second by Councilor Vanderbilt, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. For the record, the deputy director, we're going to this every single night, swatting through this.
Of course.
Perfect. Now we're on to, okay. So now I'm going to move on to our, order contract and supply matters, and I think I'm going to actually, ask for a motion to rearrange our agenda so that we can take all the, votes for the, resolutions at the end, and I want to move quickly to that, so we're not taking everyone, waiting, but I think we're going to, I'm going to ask for motion to amend and take item 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. I'm going to ask that we move those to the end of the agenda. So thank you. All right. Motion made by Councilor Gray, 70 by Councilor Rainfall. All in favor? Aye. No opposed. Okay, with that, we have item number 5.
Item 5, resolution authorizing approval of the following funded contract award by the Board of Central Supply in accordance with section 21-26B5 of the Code of Ordinances. Print street lights, $100,000 Department of Public Property.
Okay, I am going to use myself from this matter, so I'm going to ask the vice chair to provide over the agenda item 5. Right.
John, maybe Director of Public Property.
Amanda Pontarelli, Deputy Director of Public Property.
So we have to, we can say about it, we're
looking to add $100,000. It's that 100,000 is not spent. It's just to cover us for the remainder of the year. To cover us the remainder of the year in case we have any emergencies that we have to fix immediately.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director. I have a couple questions. So, I know this isn't the re of the recent contract. One of the same re because it looks like that's expiring, like.
Yes,
When will we see that go out to bid?
it's already been put up the bid.
The director of purchasing is working on that now.
Okay. Because that was my concern, I saw we were just adding the one thing expires, that many per month, and so it's like, I wanted to see that, because I we talked about this, but I had concerns about the contract. So I guess I have a few questions about this in particular, and I want a lot of guys contract, but, what about this year, we may just need to add 100,000 in the water contract, like what's going on?
We're having quite a bit of problems with the lighting. Right now, sitting on deck, right now, we have $154,000 in the lighting that has to be replaced.
Estimate that at the beginning of the
That's
contract?
bids that we have right now on the existing items that we called in. Quite a few poles have been hit this year. Approximately 35 poles have been hit. The average cost to put a pole in is $14,000, $15,000. I mean, it adds up quick.
Has it been more? Yeah. Sorry. Is that more hits than prior years? Do we see an increase in the number of goals hit, or are we just being more proactive in the management of the prison contract?
My first year, so I could.
It's pretty standard, but we were able to recuperate 109,000 of insurance proceeds for the pole knockdowns since January, so we have something to offset it.
Okay, that's what it's. Do you often come back? I remember this coming up last year, like, do you often come back to the hour, or they're just looking more of a shoot lights?
It's just to be safe to get to the end of the fiscal year, just to have that 100,000 buffer in case we need to authorize work for them to do immediately.
And is this work that we requested of them? Because my concern has been, because it doesn't seem to me, that was, tell me that I'm wrong, that there's proactive work that happens from prison. It's like the lights go out and they remain out, unless like one of us or decisions we call through to go out, like false prison, like you guys are also. But that seems like we shouldn't be paying someone to, like, what would it look like for us to do this with us? It's two questions I have.
Do this ourselves as far as which way.
Like, could we maintain our own lights, like we maintain our phones? If we're,
I'm not equipped to do that. I don't think we have staff that are equipped to do that, no.
and then like, are they proactive, or is the, like, do we have to follow in every single light? Because I think we determined they can see it now.
Yes, they can see when it goes up, but they're waiting for us to do the initial request on it because it's our budget that we're trying to regulate.
But outside of this 100,000, like, let's say we have 100,000 and like 5 lights go out on the street. Can they see and just proactively fix those lights, or do I have to like call that, which is what I would do to get this fixed?
They can see if electricity is going to that light. I'm not sure if they can see if that light is active. I'd have to do some research on that.
When the contract comes back with the greatest safety and something more proactive management, there's like tons of lights that go out. And it seems like such a basic thing that they should be able to know, like, lights not out. Or just like very proactive. So I feel like crazy, it just seems like, this seems like a very basic function of the city to light for. They've been very frustrated with me that like, they've been part of the process, where like, I won't have to done with me treating dark and have to talk about like. Okay, thanks. I've been like, that's just like, really sad, I'm just gonna be said, okay.
No, I understand that. I mean, the other thing you have to think about is 17,000 lights they have to keep an eye on. I mean, it's
like, automated, it's just like, this is like, like I imagine it's like. Ways they can see this on the system.
yes.
Okay.
Again, they can see there's electricity going to that pole. I'm not sure if they can see if the light is on or off the bulb itself. That I'm not sure on.
And a lot of it is infrastructure related, so it's more the underground wiring, and it's like a bigger problem, which we have funding in the capital budget upcoming to get to the bigger electrical issues.
Plus, there's times we have to wait for National Grid to get involved, and that's a wait. So the light stays on until they come.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And when it comes back and forth, contract would be great if someone from prison could come. I know that the whole would be great to discuss that question. I remember when we started like 2013. So I remember it was like a big deal. Like, right, but. Yeah. Thank you.
What's that?
Nothing.
Just for my own educational purposes, it's pretty late in the fiscal year, so I guess it's about these things finances, where does 100,000 come from? Like in our budget, like, obviously we didn't like budget for this like last year, so I guess.
My understanding is that it's going to be covered by the existing budget of public property. I don't anticipate them going over budget. I think when they estimated how much they would need and they encumbered against this particular contract, they were under, but they have saved in other contracts, so their budget will still be in match.
Take it out.
I will reduce the food on time. Oh, I get, I'm clear, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Still got
All is good. That, in the back.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Very much transparent. And I also wanted to recognize that we've now for years ago, this not very Madam Clerk, would you please read the item number? Thank you.
Item 11, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21-26 of the Code of Ordinances. One aspect of the River Watershed Council, $350,000, Department of Public Property.
I think we have Department of Public Property again. We send you that. The check item number 11. No, we're talking for CIP. I think your representation was the front of CIP. Oh, or is there, whoever these present on the side, please come to the table.
Wow.
Friendly.
Please raise your right hand.
Some of us are.
Do you swear and defend the truth, testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And please state your names.
I'm Alicia Lehrer. I'm the Executive Director of the Winnesquatucket River Watershed Council.
And I'm Mark Carrera, Civil Engineer for the Winnesquatucket River Watershed Council.
Wonderful. Let's see, thank you for joining us. We've seen quite a bit from you. We're happy to see. Can you tell us a little bit about this project?
Yes, this is the second phase of the Winnesquatucket River Greenway Extension Project on Promenade Street and Kinsley Avenue from Eagle Square to Providence Place Mall. And our organization is in receipt of $3.4 million for the second phase of this project through federally designated earmark funding. And we require a local match for the funding, and this match, the amount $350 is part of that match request. And it will include, I will turn in this testimony also, but it will include design and construction of a pedestrian and bike bridge that is on between Providence Place and Promenade Street. Full design and construction of a pocket park on the corner of Bath Street and Promenade Street that includes stormwater infrastructure. full design and construction of a pocket park on the Leland Avenue section of Promenade Street that will have a canoe and kayak launch and a public park space. And lighting design for the entire stretch of that part of the greenway.
I'll say this is very impressive. $3.4 million grant we received for this project.
Yep.
Wonderful. Very smart with the project. Are there any questions from the customers? Yes, I heard great. Okay, let's go. It's already like, so and the bike lane, that's not really designated for that area. So. We have a meeting with his walking college. But I know the bike lanes and high stuff. I don't know. If we did it, all this stuff, if that was my understanding, I think that. So. That's my only concern. Biggest concern. I'm very sure that the people around it. But those are my biggest concerns and $50,000. How that advance? I said, we need an advance.
Yes, to leverage federal funding, you need a local match. And the total match amount is 850,000 for that 3.4 million. So this is a portion of that 850,000. The other part would be coming from the Department of Transportation Office of Stormwater for construction of that Bath Street Pocket Park.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's come from capital improvement funding, is that what you said? Capital improvement. It's pending for 2025.
Yes, chief.
I guess I should add, I don't think our witness knows the answer to that, but the funding for this particular project is included in the upcoming CIP project that's scheduled for closing shortly after the fiscal year begins. And this is one of the approved projects, so it has already been approved by both the Public Building Authority and the Public Works.
Oh,
Yes, it is.
thank you for clarification. So in that monitor, do you have another follow-up to that? Sorry, not to break some of this call. This is very, that's it. Why did you keep 25 budget for the letters pending budget for by any?
I think that letter, it should have said pending bond issuance, because we need the bond funds to arrive prior to issue.
Yeah,
Correct.
Thank you. Yes, please, you're finished. Yes, Councilor Peterson, thank you for being here. If I could ask how much the administrative department tax for this?
For the 350,000.
Yeah.
I don't think we were asking for any administrative costs out of that.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Randall. I know this is no due respect, but I'm super excited about this. I'm so excited to see you guys under construction there. And it was so exciting to see technical leadership come to like the southern trade, the park that you guys was. decades of long area, so I'm just like super excited about this, and we feel the benefit and just see all the great stuff that's happening over there. Especially with all the like pollution that ends up in the river over there, like my kayak over there, and like all the great stuff that we guys are putting in, and prevent pollution, absorb all that stormwater, that's just like, the ones down Providence, like, anyway, it's very exciting. I live down Providence over here, and it's like, oh yeah, but, anyway, I'm just super excited, just want to like bring that, you know, for the project.
Can I answer,
Yes, please.
can I answer Councilwoman Graves? So first of all, Councilwoman Graves, regarding the bike lanes, that's not part of this request. That's already under construction for phase 1. That's been approved through the city. I mean, we don't have anything to do with that. That's in the planning department. And that contract for construction has already been allocated.
Okay.
And then secondly, regarding the lighting question, so the proposed lighting design for this area would be to do better coverage of the lighting than there is now, and to change the style of lighting so that it's only shining down and not causing light pollution up. And it would be more efficient type of lighting, so it would be less energy for the lights that we're planning to design.
Okay, yes, that's great. You know, it's really great. Yeah, yes, I do have more questions, but I did not go right then to talk about it. So that, yeah, so, but the other thing is the, investment of traffic, I think we have really good idea, like, talk more about it, because somehow that law is an idea, there's something going on, and you're going right into the problem. So they already have issues, so hopefully the designs are gonna be, further or something's gonna be done. To follow all that and address that issue, because that's a major issue. Okay. Did he give a response? I'm sorry. No, that's and we've been talking that whole time. I don't even know. Okay, I apologize. Yes, I have to say.
I think we should look into congestion pricing, we're going into the process more.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or further questions on this statement? Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
There's a motion to approve made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Rainbow. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we do have our testimony here if anybody wants it.
You will, yeah, it's more.
That's a different one.
Oh, we'll just have it for, take that. You can take that. If you want to put it as an exhibit. Yes, we don't need to add it out. We don't need. We'll mark it as an exhibit. May I have a motion to mark this as exhibit number 1. Second, right, motion made by Councilor Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Rainbow. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Well, we thank you very much. We really appreciate the support of the Finance Committee and the City Council. It means the world to us. Thank you so much.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read item number 15.
Item 15, resolution authorizing approval of the following amended contract award for the Board of Comprehensive Plan in accordance with section 21-36.4 of the Code of Ordinances. Metro Rhode Island, $820,000 Department of Activity Recovery Office.
Okay. So this Metro Rhode Island, I believe it's from Horace, because they changed one of the except for 20%. We have figured 20%.
I go right to the top. Okay, so
I
we'll see.
raise your right hand. Do you swear on the penalty of perjury that testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. And please take it. Alexander Gonzalez, Director of Community Recovery and Compliance.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. How are you? I guess I can just jump right in on
Yes,
these
please.
questions. Okay. We have an exhibit.
You want to start, let's mark yours with that. We have an exhibit, and we are now going to distribute that, or you can, we are trying to make this, it's a motion.
So moved.
Second, motion made by Council Sanchez, seconded by Council Dwight, all in favor? All opposed? Proceed.
Okay, I just wanted to give a bit of background. We did go out to RFP for this process. Yes, we went out to RFP for this process, back in February. And the bids closed, I believe, in March. So we put a committee together to review the bid that also included city council staff, as part of the review committee. When we put out the bid, we did it with no, cost on the award, so we didn't want, and strategically we did that so it wouldn't influence any bids proposals in their cost allocation. So when we received bids, it was simply the cost proposals to administer the program, and it did not include how much would be awarded to grantees through this program. And that was done uniquely just so we made sure cost proposals were not inflated by or influenced by what we put on the RFP. In doing so, when we made the award and recommendation for Mentor RI, was identified as the lowest cost bidder and also the highest evaluated through the scoring process. We realized that we needed to award them the funding for the grants that they'll be issuing and administering through this program. And so that's what we're seeking here. The $820,000 is really just to award the identified grantees through this program. The $175,000 is for the cost to administer and monitor the program and implementation. Yes.
Just to confirm. So I think that we didn't complete the cost.
Yeah, so
Then you chose the where's the statement? The lowest cost and the highest value according to your matrix metrics, whatever we use. And of that money that you're asking for, so of the 820, 175 is the administration fee.
no, so the full request is to award Mentor RI $995,000. That is what we have allocated in our budget for ARPA. The 175 is specifically what was submitted in their bid proposal to administer the program. The 820 is what will be the grants that they're going to be awarding and administering. I'm sorry.
Yeah, great. So we're going to go off.
So looking at the mappings that you just gave us, whether we have guidance to do that, it was like two bidders.
Yes.
Mentor and Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and I just been confirming everything, right? So Mentor said that they will administer the program for 175. Big Brothers and I propose administering it for 364.
Yes.
Okay, so, and that was just for administration.
That is just for administration. Yeah.
And it's, can you just, for the administration of it, I just more, I don't know what you guys did last year, like, that things have changed. It's more than just like they're cutting checks for the teacher, there's a lot of active management, there's a lot of work? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in their bid proposal, they have a program, where they do training on the mentors and also the mentees. And so that's part of the implementation program, also monitoring, aside from the training, they also give guidance. They also organize some of the, I'll say collection of students or potential mentees and identify who would be their connection. So that's the most I can say. I can also have Mentor RI kind of give you guys a more elaborate summary of what they do. But based on the evaluation from their cost proposal, also their submission, it was the most highly evaluated through 7 committee members that we put together.
That's helpful, because it sounds like, yes,
Yeah.
it's not just like a face for introduction. Sometimes overnight is really just like a staff, the start.
Yeah.
It feels more like, but recommend it doesn't work like it's built that and also some built that cost, so it's not securely like.
Yes, it also includes evaluation, so some surveys and some trainings and also some kickoff meetings, et cetera, some engagement with the students as well, or the youth, I should say. So it's really just to administer and implement and also evaluate the program.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I just first I want to thank you for the review of this particular RFP last year like meeting before everybody. I had a lot of questions with the process of studying prayer and I questioned quite a bit, so thank you very much for redoing this, and I congratulate and for receiving the award. The work that was done previously, and also to continue and thank you for the meeting. One question I do have, however, is do you guys, if the RP and the rubric or the metrics that you provide, is there a maximum administrative cost that you request that 10%?
Yes, we requested 10% as administrative costs, and with their proposal that they submitted, it would be within the 10%.
I definitely know it means 20.
Oh, well, sorry. So their staffing salary fell within the 10%. The rest is also like the evaluation piece and some of like, transportation for students. I can get you their like detailed cost proposal if that's helpful. But again, in terms of when we compared to the 2 bidders, this one was the most cost effective, and also in terms of experience and evaluation, it met the metrics that we for. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was my, sorry, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alexandria, on this presentation. Just to confirm, it's 2 separate bids, right? The one for 175 is not included, it was 820, right?
So it's 2, yes, it's 2 separate. So the 820 will be only awarded to who they identify to run their as sub-grantees, I'm sorry. So part of this program and the scope of work that Mentor will be doing is identifying who the grantees will be, administering the grants, and also implementation of the program, their training program for mentors and mentees, and also evaluation and implementation. So.
Yeah, so I guess, I understand that part, so
Yeah.
what I understand is just the number, so
Yeah.
I know that 175 is going, was the bid. And now there's 820 here, but then I heard a 990
Yeah.
total, so I just want to make sure what we're moving is the actual full amount, and I'm just not seeing any of the documents that reflect that.
If you would mind, so when you read it out, you disclose how many programs that they were going to handle?
No, so we just asked for, there's a evaluation criteria which is included in this exhibit that I submitted today in terms of the scope of work, and then also the part of the implementation piece. When we put it out, we did not want to include how much was allocated in our ARPA ordinance for this specific program, the second round of Mentor RI, to avoid influencing or inflating any bidders' cost proposals. So.
And that will have an impact on how much for the organization. If I had 820,000 for the course, more than I had 100,000 in the program.
Is that fair to consider? I don't know, I didn't get specification, to be honest with you, so I don't know how it would fit.
Well, they have previously, so part of the bid and evaluation was demonstrated ability to do this, run this program and previous programs. Mentor Rhode Island has, as you know, done this program for round one, but also they have a history of running programs such as this. And so we felt like it was, based on their submission of their cost, we felt like it was equitable because they have experience running this program. So their cost proposals, assuming how much time it would take to implement and also train, et cetera. Is that helpful?
Yes, yeah, and they're not going to come back with another thing, saying that they have spent that, they need more money, but they have more.
I will also add, when we did this the first round, we put out the RFP with the total amount allocated from the ARPA budget or ordinance, I should say. And cost proposals came in at the exact amount. And so this strategy, this round, we did this strategically just to see exactly what the cost of implementation would be, as opposed to folks submitting bids for the whole allocation that we put in the budget. And we think that is probably the most equitable way to do it.
Great. Yes,
I guess I would ask the auditor to clarify my question. So I understand that 175 was the bid I received, and then looks like H20 is what folks are gonna be able to. So where are we? Where are you seeing that?
So I guess the question is, Madam Auditor, where the. But the change of it would be from 820,000.
Thank you. I was looking very long.
Okay, and you.
I do have a question.
Please.
What are the other mechanisms in place for like compliance to make sure that they don't go over 10% in the.
Yeah, our office does monthly monitoring, so when they submit their budgets, we review all of their timesheets, their staff's time allocation, all of their like invoices that they're submitting, who the sub-grantees or beneficiaries will be of this program. And so as we get those coming in, we're constantly reviewing in terms of compliance, if it falls in line with the federal guidelines, and also city guidelines as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Peterson. So, sorry, I think as we were talking, I don't remember, but, the recovery office no longer has any more additional funds. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So what will happen if this program is done? That's probably on there.
I'm not sure. I don't know if the city of, I can't speak to the city of Providence and what, as the city as a whole has invested in or set aside for this upcoming budget for mentoring. I can say folks are fully aware that this is temporary funding. This is coming from, you know, COVID dollars, and this is temporary and it's not a vehicle for long-term sustainability. So we have made that clear in the RFP where the source of the funding is and the intention. And unfortunately, I can't speak to the mayor's full budget and the city's strategic plan. Yeah.
Thank you. The reason why I asked is because this particular RFP is very important to me, like to the value of what and we're asking this field and understand very much what the value of leadership is, the importance of the sustainability of this particular project. So while I appreciate that this is great, one of the things that I would love to see, if at all possible, whenever there's no coming back on this, is plans for sustainability outside of this evaluation for each program, whoever is dedicated to these funds. It's essential for taking and participating in programs like that is very, for me, that is extremely important. To ensure vitality and the work outside of this. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Second.
Motion made by Council, motion to approve, made by Council Amberlaw, seconded by Council Sanchez, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and then third, item number 16.
Item 16, resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Conferences right in accordance with section 21-762 of the Code of Ordinances. Rhode Island Public Health Institute, $259,765. Department of Housing and Human Services.
Okay. And we have considered that we're going to be distributing marketing as exhibit number 3 and have a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye. All opposed. I'm ready to this table.
Thank you. Please bear with County Attorney, that testimony you're about to give is true. I do. And please state your name for the record. Rachel Farrar.
Thank you so much for coming in. We're just gonna take 1 minute and just make sure we have the point down in front of us. Hey, please proceed.
The Department of Housing and Human Services is seeking approval to enter a contract with the Rhode Island Public Health Institute. We would like to do this to partner with them to design a behavioral health screening protocol that can be used in community settings. And we would like to pilot this protocol in our selected recreation centers that are receiving the capital funds, in which we're required to provide health programming. We've chosen Rhode Island Public Health Institute based on the fact that they, one, have experience with public health research and program design. We also are requiring that this process be co-created with the community, and therefore we wanted a local partner. And when we did an environmental scan of the local partners with the qualifications needed, we found that Rhode Island Public Health Institute was the only vendor available. In addition, they've been awarded a federal contract under the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration to do behavioral health screening work. And so if we look at the design process in 4 steps, this grant that they had with SAMHSA in collaboration with some other partners really allowed them to already complete step 1 in understanding the problem landscape. And so they can hit the ground running on step 2, which will be a savings to us.
I'm sorry, if you were shipping these locations to collect the
So the idea is that we'll have a program designed in hand with all of the protocols and policies. They'll pilot that, so then we can implement it in our recreation centers where we're required to do health programming, and then also to be able to adapt it to other community settings.
And did you say that this is you're only going to be doing this in certain rec centers right now? Would you be expanding after I see the Davy Lowe's job coming down the family?
Yes, the original 3 centers were selected because they're the 3 centers that are receiving the capital funds and where the city will be required under that grant to do the health programming. We do want to adapt and expand to all of our recreation centers and to other community settings based on the scope of funding that's available right now. The 3 centers is what is feasible.
Okay, questions? Yes.
I don't have the address off the top of my head.
I've never heard of that.
So it's the community center that the city had taken over. So it was
West?
Elmwood Community. Yes,
West Town, oh,
sorry, I apologize. That was my fault.
I thought it was another one.
Thank you, Rachel?
Yes.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a super great work, important work. It's been engaged. My question is, is there gonna be any, reports or data collection, like, how can we, tabs, I guess, with the progress of this program, pilot?
Yes, so as we're working through the design process, all of the key findings through the engagement piece will need to be reported out. And then as we're moving into prototyping, and getting feedback from the community on those pieces, there'll also be data collection. And then when we go into the pilot phase, there'll be what you would think of more standard programmatic data collection and evaluation. And then based off those evaluations is where we would iterate and make adaptation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Madam Graves. I'm going back to the blue. Went to the county because of the capital fund, which we were trying to get more bang. I don't know how many digital people are really that's some. David knows that can understand.
I can speak to Jocelyn Center, it's not. Much in the market, we don't see this.
Most of them are, they know this time doesn't have. Using this. Right now. Okay, so that, okay, that's. I was just wondering, but sometimes we're trying to couple with ways, but we have a specific program. Trying to zone it on certain people. Sometimes we can't go with them. But that was not.
I will say that the choice to use these ARPA dollars to design this behavioral health protocol was made based on research and analysis and looking at recent community assessments that I did prior to the recreation centers. While we will be piloting it at those centers, the community engagement piece is a requirement of that whole community, not just the people who are attending at the recs. And part of the idea is that we can help to bring more people in to get more services there.
The whole city or just one? That.
It would be from the whole city.
Okay.
And we also have spoken with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging about this project. And they're very aware and very excited about it and are going to ensure that the introductions are made so that we have all of the necessary voices at the table.
Absolutely great, so you will set, and African Americans, people are referring to. African Americans.
That line was pulled directly from the reparations report. I should have made an edit, but that is how it is worded, within the report for this line item.
Okay, good.
Words matter, I understand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Auditor. I have one question, in the third paragraph of the letter, so we have the public health and safety, the whole day, the way these qualifications that is also about substance use and mental health services, administration rates. There is no one else qualified in this around that in the unit. Service. But everyone uses that sole vendor very useful. I guess very, very concerned with that. It's okay if there's a most qualified or the one that is willing to do it, but to be the sole vendor. Is that really true?
When we did an environmental scan of the vendors who are available, that was our finding.
But they're not the sole vendor. I mean, Providence Center doesn't do this kind of thing, or, you know.
The Providence Center does not participate in this type of program design and research. They usually partner with someone else to do so.
part of the set. Sorry. And at this point, there was not enough. Yeah, that has a sole interval, it just eliminates changing. So that is what we I appreciate that. Keep that in mind going forward. Yeah, both of you. I understand why it is that you were requesting it. Be very cognizant of this. Thank you. With that said, any other comments regarding? Is there a motion? Okay, motion to approve made by Councilor Ravenbaugh, seconded by Councilor Graves, all in favor? Aye. All opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our final member of board school. Item number 17.
Item 17, resolution authorizing approval of the following amended contract award with the water content supply in accordance with section 21-26B4 of the Code of Ordinances. Landmark Public Art Design Services. $960,011. Department of Art, Culture and Tourism.
Okay, we have someone line who's presenting on this now. And I'm sorry, what is the name? I think it's Linda. Lola, Mr. Lola. Okay, we can recognize him. There you are. Okay, great. Hold on, excuse me, I'm gonna put you, I'm just gonna ask you to hold on that longer, if you could, please speak. I really think it should be called property. I'm sorry, it's Mr. Goldblum, what is your position?
I'm a project manager for the CIP Public Art Program for the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism.
Okay, we're just, so it says the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism. I think we're gonna let him. Yes, please, we're gonna have it again. You ready right hand? Okay.
Fine.
That's where you went. You raise your right hand. Just be able to come to the first, that's where you're about to get it. The whole truth, none but the truth. You hear us?
I can only hear some of you who are closer to the microphone, so I do apologize for that.
You can see our two, you just sworn in, is that okay?
I'm happy to be sworn in.
Okay, we just
Nice.
swore you in, so we're gonna, are we good to go? All right, and I'm sorry for all the confusion on our end, but we are very excited to hear your presentation.
So we are requesting an amendment to the Landmark Public Art Design Services that was rendered to Sade McConan via Sade LLC. It's for the Landmark Public Art Program in the amount of $960,000 and $960,011 to reflect the correct amount of the award, as well as a revision to the contract for a total amount of $1,020,000 in fiscal year 2024. Prior to this, request, there was a clerical error. The original award was that was issued by Box was only for the first of several payments to be made. The original amount of this contract was $850,000. A contract was created for the project per the recommendation of the law department. Between then and now, the vendor has experienced a significant increase in production and fabrication costs due to inflation, and $470,000 of an increase that have heavily impacted the ability to execute the original project vision. Little background information: the city's call for proposals was launched in 2021, with deliberations concluding in the fall of the same year. The city budget deliberation and contract negotiations did not close until March 2023, and the first deposit and kickoff meeting did not occur until fall 2023. This long negotiation process explains why the vendor has experienced a significant increase in production and fabrication costs that have heavily impacted its ability to execute the original project vision. In terms of funds, there is currently $35,000 available in the account PPBA 202A 2.45, and funds of $135,000 are available in the account PPBA 202A 2.49. To the account for a total of $170,000 increase to the original $850,000 contract.
Can you just briefly tell us about the project?
Happily, yeah. Where do you want me to start, I guess is the question.
Well, when the RFP, let's start with the RFP. When the RFP went out in 2021, what were you asking for?
Sure. So I might even go a step back to explain why the RFP happened. I think that might provide some helpful context here. The RFP came out of the Percent for Public Art Ordinance, which had been on the books since 1980s, but had never been implemented. It was the first time it was implemented. It was a percentage of all CIP funding. And so the idea was to create a larger impact. The money was pooled together for about $1.3 million, plus or minus, and to create a handful of very impactful artworks, public artworks. So part of that, other projects is the Elmwood Community Center mural, which has been fully executed. I know we were talking about we mentioned the Elmwood the community center earlier, but the sidewalk tattoos, which are actually, if you maybe see some of the recent work that's from ARPA funded sidewalks, they're actually finally being implemented into it. So you're going to start seeing those across the city in each ward. And then the largest project, the lion's share of the funding went towards the landmark public art project in the I-195 redevelopment district, redevelopment innovation district. And that was a public bid that went out for $850,000. So the way that procurement works for public artwork, it does, the city does it, and also the city follows the state's kind of general approach to this, which is to set a flat rate amount and see what artists are interested in taking on something of that scope. And the reason being is that it results in better art. I spoke to someone who does this work, and they said that it's you want to have a mural on the wall, not crayons and paper. But if you go with the lowest bidder, you might get crayons and paper. So we proceeded with an RFQ process that then resulted in RFP. So the RFQ, we request qualifications from artists from both Providence and Rhode Island, but also internationally, domestically and internationally. This was a pretty major bid, right, for a pretty impactful work of art. And so we wanted to make sure we had a really broad array of potential artists. There were 207 applicants, or I believe it was 207 who submitted, of wide practices, age, demographic ranges, etc., including Providence and Rhode Island-based artists. And there was a selection committee that was also set up by the Art and City Life Commission, that had a number of experts as well as city representatives. the selection process selected 5 artists who were then invited to the city to meet community stakeholders, to have access to research documents and research, resources, et cetera. And then they prepared an actual proposal of artwork with an attached budget. And then also they received community input from that. After that point, there was a selection process by that same selection committee where a final artist and an alternate were recommended. Those were recommended to the Art and City Life, Art and City Life then accepted the recommendations, and those recommendations were for Sede McConan and then for Deborah Spears Moorhead and Allison Newsome. Those two were a pair as the alternate. So Sede and then Deborah Spears Moorhead and Allison Newsome. So after that point, but I should note that something important happened was that there was the panelists and then the artists agreed to making particular design changes and design modifications to the works based on community feedback. So what then proceeded was a lengthy negotiation process, as well as the city preparing a survey of the land. We concluded the negotiation process in 2023. And the artist has since been preparing a updated design titled Design 2, very creatively. And once we see Design 2, then the idea would be that we would then start advancing that with any regulatory bodies, et cetera, et cetera. That would also provide an updated vision or an updated design reflecting those initial changes, as well as incorporating new costs that have occurred over the past 3 years, which as we all know, have increased quite considerably. That is how we reached the 800. That's how we reached the artwork, and then that's how we are now at the requested increase for $170,000 on top of the original 850.
As for the 470, is that also, how about the public art ordinance where we do a percentage? Let's get the funds and allocate them, is that all within that budget?
It is.
Hold on just a minute.
Yes, Madam Chair, that was the committee. This ordinance was enacted in 1980, but did not become operative until the city began a formal CIP borrowing program, which really was 4 years ago, that very first CIP. And then the one that's coming next, we have allocated 1% of the total amount. So on the previous one, I believe was on 100 million, so that would be 1% of that. But today, on this 135 million, we have not allocated 1% of that as well.
So, and this additional funding is within that, just.
Yes, it is.
And yes, to be clear, it is.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
The department maintained a contingency related to these projects, as we have been told by peer departments across departments that their new costs come up. So I'd like to think that we acted relatively prudently regarding this, so we do have the funds available.
Will these be permanent art installations?
It will be. It will be permanent art installations. There are going to be a number of illuminated steel columns. The steel columns will be reflective through an intensive polishing process. And then they'll have these kind of very intricate designs cut into them that will glow in night and then kind of be cut out of the mirror during the day. There will be some slight, I think, according to the draft Design 2 that I have seen, potentially some seating elements. And yeah, I think, and they're set to be permanent. I mean, one of the things that we've done also is to have a technical consultant, Rika Smith, who has a significant experience with exterior work, especially along the coast, to ensure that also these are being developed in a way that has a substantial degree of longevity.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Yes, that's great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Alexander. I think this is a great project. I just have some math questions because I don't fully understand all the numbers mapping into each other. Because it looks like the first, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. It looks like the first contract was for $850. But there was other numbers referenced in the contract, 650 and 146. So it was saying that like the artist uses 650 for drawings, 146 for fees, and then the total wasn't the sum of those. Like, can you just like, walk us through like what are all the different numbers we're looking at? They don't all map into each other. Like,
yeah, essentially, there were. I think they were basically like typos that then ended up getting grandfathered in because they were part of the original element. The 850 was really always the original intention.
That's like where the clerical error was, but like there were numbers in there that don't have to be 850.
Correct. But the approved amount, the amount that was listed in the original RFP, like all of those numbers were 850. So like the original amount that was approved, the original amount that we publicly declared, the amount that we signed the agreement for were all 850. So I apologize for the
Oh, no worries. I just want to make sure I'm like.
No. You're that's a good question.
In the first paragraph, there's a reference to $960,000 and $960 and $11. What's that number? Because it looks like my understanding this was 850. We're adding 170 because of the significant increase in this.
Yes. So so again, we're doing this program for the first time, but I think also because we're in between, in terms of the funding and approval process, it's between the PPBA and then Box, and there have been discussions around how to proceed with that. Essentially, we were instructed to proceed with the first payment. So the artist presented an initial invoice for the very first payment. It would have been one part of the full design to deliverable or full design to budget. And so we brought that initial invoice forward for approval. It was approved, but then no further approvals were, generated. We never had gotten additional okays for future for spending this. So I think that 960 that you're seeing is basically is the if you took the full 1,020,000 and then you subtracted the initial invoice that was sought by the artist, because that was the amount that was not approved. So it's both. So it's trying to remedy. I think the idea is that in the one letter, it's trying to remedy both the the increase in the budget as well as the retroactive. Hey, we accidentally did this in the wrong order process.
I have to work on this contract, so I don't think I can try to speak very briefly to this. The original contract was for $850,000. The artist's request to actually complete the project is $170,000. That would bring the total budget for the project to completion $1,020,000. The actual award that came from Box was $59,989. So what you need to approve in order to add to that before to get us to $1,020,000 is $960,011. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Was the contract
that has been signed and sent to all the things, right? Yes. Does that set without having approval? We, for the school now. Well, the PDA, so this is actually the PDA bond money, so we didn't have the PDA on, PDA board approval. But yes, there had been the draft error in the board of office. Yeah, so that's why we need to go. Okay, because I was like, why we should do updated 175, but it's something. I think we were. Sorry, I was like trying to keep that on my phone because like it's start.
I'll even tell you, you're talking. I think I'm really trustworthy person.
Yes, that's what's.
Thank you so much, Solicitor, thank you so much, for your clarification, I think a little more, educated, process. I just have one question, Alexander. Was there any, like, local component to this RFP? Because my understanding is, out of town artists, which I'm sure they're very capable and talented, but I just feel like we have so much, talent when it comes to the arts, here in Providence, so that's just my only question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think supporting local arts and creativity is a really important thing that the department prioritizes. And even in the broad CIP funded projects, there's been a focus on that. For instance, the sidewalk tattoos, all of those were artists who showed residence at the time in Providence. So that was art show featuring art that also put money in the pockets of artists, local artists. Regarding this project, there was a preference for Providence and Rhode Island based artists, and that was weighted within the RFQ process. So there's that was the first piece. So the 5 selected artists were selected, and some of them, for instance, Allison Newsome and Deborah Spears-Moorhead, are local artists. The second component, and actually a number of the 2 of the other artists were regional artists. So I know it's not Providence or Rhode Island, but they were in Massachusetts, and in the scope of the entire country, that is still within a region. The other thing I would say is that there was in terms of the criteria for selection of the actual proposal, there was a focus on, well, I'll even get before that. As the artists were preparing their proposal, there was elements of community engagement. There were 2 large community feedback sessions as the artists were developing their concepts, and they also were actually invited into the city, where we held almost a mini conference for them to engage with community groups, with community resources like the library. And then in terms of the actual selection process, the artists were requested, or part of the selection process was level of engagement and local context. I believe that, and you can see this through the selection panel notes that was, approved by the RNC Life Commission in 2021 when they accepted the recommendations, is that SEDE puts a premium on engaging local artists and performers, especially. She's a performance artist as well. So what we're going to be seeing, what she is committed to, is a number of events in collaboration with local groups here. Local artists. Yeah.
Very much. We're very excited to see the installation.
So are we.
Oh, good. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Sorry.
Very motion approved made by Councilor Aveloff, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have, then we need to stand on the script for a minute. Well, yeah, we are sorry, we're now. You don't get, yeah, thank you. Presenters on the school would like to come up to the table, maybe, or not certain now.
Please raise your right hand. You swear on the penalty of perjury and the testimony you're about to give. State your names and titles for the record. Good evening, my name is Karen Grandy. I'm the city's bond counsel from Lock Lord.
Oh, okay. So we're back. She's gonna take the rest.
Okay.
I met it right.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. My pleasure. Well, that's the fun. Want to do I'm sorry.
It's just the bonder.
Yes. The state reimbursement.
Right. Congratulations. Yeah, we got a budget. Because, you contracts in place by. Yeah. Awarding contract for the bonds.
So, we're back, and thank you very much. I'm starting with the standard. I will say that we are going to have we're going to do a motion to waive the readings of items number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, we're gonna waive readings, also we're going to this one, leave the readings, but the maybe because I think we're a lot of to show the school. Okay, motion made by Council Gray, seconded by Councilor Taylor, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, and then we, during the break, we did swear in our speakers. They want to give you that.
Please raise your right hand. You swear in the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Please state your name and titles for the record. Surely. My name is Karen Grandy. I'm a partner at the law firm of Lock Lord. We serve as bond counsel to the city of Providence.
Joe DeSanti, Director of Project Management at Downs Construction, and the only project manager for the school construction program. I'm the new Chief Operations Officer of the Rhode Island Department.
Thank you so much for coming. Who's like to start?
So, Madam Chair, I was previously sworn, so thank you and the committee for entertaining this matter this evening. It is a time of the essence matter, and I appreciate your concern and that of the members of the committee and the city council. This evening, as you heard, we are joined by Mr. Carreno from Rhode Island Department of Education, and Mr. DeSanti from Downs Construction, which is the city's OPM or project manager, and also Ms. Rondi, who can answer questions associated with bond counsel. With that, I would ask your permission to kick off with having Mr. Carreno, who I believe submitted a presentation this evening for the benefit of the committee and council members.
Thank you so much. You can pass these out now, Martin. And also let's recognize we're joined by Council Johnson. Thank you for coming. And then as we're, distributing this, I think we'll be marking this as example number 4. Right, made by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Stan, that's all of you. I will vote. Okay.
Us kids. That was it.
People set, we have. We all set? All right, thank you very much. If you would mind proceeding.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council, Madam President. We're here to discuss the projects which are composed of phase 4, the $400 million bond, which we alluded to a couple weeks ago when we were here before this body. Again, just there's other council members here, but the goal of these projects, as well as the first 3 phases, are to give the opportunity for the first time in city history, all students would be able to, if they choose to, attend the new school, something that we've never been able to say, and the goal is here before us by the year 2030. On slide 3, in terms of timeline, this timeline, which was first shown to this group in November, is the timeline for bonuses. There are other opportunities for approvals and discussions thereafter, and we'll discuss those in a minute. But very briefly, how we got here. Last June, the General Assembly extended the housing aid bonuses, which have made this a reality. Within a matter of months, the district and the city put together a stage 1 application to get into the pipeline, something that was not possible prior to July 1st. In November, we presented here at the Finance Committee for a resolution of $400 million to go to the General Assembly, which would fund phase 4 projects. From that point in time, the city's project manager and architects, working with the building committee, put together a project list, which was approved by both the building committee and the city council, as well as the mayor, and was submitted to RIDE on February 15th. That application was reviewed by RIDE, approved on May 29th by the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education, and concurrently funding received final approval from the Senate on Tuesday through the consent agenda with unanimous approval, so that all state approvals have been granted as of this past Tuesday, which gets us to today. The final piece to secure the bonuses, which makes this financially viable, is the awarding of the contract prior to June 30th of 2024.
Would it be appropriate to ask questions as you're going, or would you like us to hold the questions?
If you don't mind holding, I think I've heard some in advance. We're going to try to answer them as we go. At the last meeting, slide 4, you had mentioned the energy sharing agreement. I have transferred to you as Exhibit 5 the term sheet that we have transmitted to the city on May 20th, which outlines the proposed terms for this agreement. The way it would work is, let's grab a school as an example, Nathaniel Green, who at the moment you pay $230,000 a year right now to heat and cool that facility. Thought is that after renovations, we would get that as close to zero as possible, which means that in this scenario, the district would send a check to the city for the difference between what they were paying in energy and what they will be paying in energy. We also have a meeting scheduled to tap into the Interest Reduction Act funding that's available to the federal government for renewable energy. That's scheduled for next week. Other districts are doing so. One of Lincoln's projects recently received 30% of funding from the federal government. We're hoping to do that on a much larger scale here in Providence as well. But the reason this is critical is we spend $7 million a year on heating and cooling buildings. Over a 20-year period, the life of the debt service, that's $140 million. They could go anywhere else except there. And I think everyone would benefit from that. So that's the agreement there. If you have any comments, please share them. We're looking to finalize that as quickly as possible. And again, that was a requirement of the city council ordinance that we have this agreement in place. We are awaiting feedback for it Slide 5, it shows how this is actually coming together. For phase 4, we're using the pie chart approach. The base aid, which is if you were to get approved at some other point in time, say July or August, and miss the bonuses, the city would only qualify for the red piece of the pie. The reason this is financially viable is because the bonus aid, the state's commitment kicks in, which means your debt service payments are smaller, means you can do more. If the bonuses are missed, the 400 million becomes less because the payments are greater for the city. The light blue, which are the energy savings, also are less because there are less new buildings. So without these contracts in place by the 30th, the bonuses are not gained, and then we have to rethink what we're doing because the documents we showed at the last meeting, we couldn't say that they had impact if we don't get this. We'd have to redo those calculations to see if it's financially viable to move forward with those projects. On slide 6, the project list, this graphic is the facility condition index. It's a way to determine on a scale the condition of a facility. The higher the number it is, the worse it is. Per state law, any building over a 65 is deemed to be a replacement candidate. The city's project manager, Downs Construction, did an update in 2022 of all Providence school facilities. These are the most updated numbers. MLK and RFK are almost off the chart. The rest of them are either very poor, or below average. Every year that the projects or the building staying in existence without funding, they just naturally move up the chart. Roofs get worse, systems are broken, windows are broken. You have to make investments to keep up with them. Otherwise, they just go on beyond repair. The reason state law deems them replacement candidates is because there's a point where it no longer makes sense to throw good money after something that you can never fix. I'll hand it over slide 7 to the project manager to speak to the procurement summary and then we resume.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, Madam President. So on the procurement, we've maintained the same delivery process that we've been very successful at, which is the design build, where we bring in the construction manager and our architect together. That ensures that we keep and reduce change orders. It also ensures that we have the contractor and designer working constantly from day one, understanding what materials are going into the building, the quality of the building, as well as identifying what long lead items. One of the things that we've seen recently in the construction industry is electrical gear taking a very long time. So those kind of things are identified early on so they could be ordered as well. The request for proposals were issued on April 8th. We had a pre-bid meeting that was attended by 26 architects and construction managers. It's again a testament that contractors want to work in Providence. We were very happy and surprised that we had that many vendors that were interested in it. We did receive bids on May 6th. The competitive market resulted in projects receiving multiple bids. We did not just get 1 or 2 bids on each project. We got multiple bids on all of the projects. And ultimately going through the vetting process, the criteria process, which some of those are, do you have experience working on schools? Do you have experience with working with RIDE? Do you have experience designing schools through the RIDE regulations and guidance? Do you understand how to build a school in Providence, which is very important because building in a city is certainly a lot different than building out in the field in some urban environment. So those are some of the selection criteria, as well as your staff that's going to be running these jobs, that's going to be leading these jobs. What is their experience with building these kind of projects? So those are all very important criteria. And something that we're become very concerned about is what is your bonding capacity and surety? Because so many projects are out the bid right now, even some of the larger contractors, we're getting very concerned. Can they get a surety, a bond, which ensures us a payment and performance bond on the project, that they'll be able to achieve that and maintain that for the period of time. So at the end of the criteria, we did make our 5 different recommendations.
Also to add, the last 3 projects that opened this year, the Bay, Narducci, and Spaziano were all also design build contracts. They were very successful. The other benefit of the design build, as opposed to the traditional method of design bid build, is when this team is formed, they come together with a blank canvas. That blank canvas goes to the community. They solicit input, they go to the building committee, they get input, and they shape a project with multiple iterations working together to deliver something very successfully. This is one of the reasons, and the main reason we chose that, because it allows the team to go together and engage the community as opposed to show with what's up. We have slides coming up with community engagement. So the kickoff for this could not have occurred prior to last Tuesday because we did not have Senate approval. There was a lot of work to get that $400 million through. The General Assembly has hesitations with numbers of that size. That is much larger than any other community. And it went down to the 11th hour. All the other communities get theirs through without any questions, but this one did go through. The reason I say that was this past Tuesday, and we wouldn't want to begin community engagement without an actual architect to actually listen to what's wanted to make changes. Otherwise, it's just a forum to just say whatever you want, and there's no action upon that. As we progress into the future, James, who is here, has already begun scheduling community meetings. We're going to target the phase 3 projects that were approved 2 weeks ago, as well as phase 4. At all of the ward meetings, the selected architects will be in attendance for all of these. We are planning district-wide meetings because, again, the voters still have to approve the funding on November 5th. So we're engaging everyone throughout. We're working on a report that highlights and compiles all of the information that is available on slide 9. This is some feedback we've received already. That QR code is for Woonsocket at the moment, an example of what they're doing. But we will have individual web pages for every project. That those web pages will be updated constantly, which will have the schedules, the renderings, a way to provide questions just on that project, so that everyone can have this information. We're revamping the overall website to share information. We have updated just recently the listserv for the building committee to include all members of the city council, as well as all members of the Providence delegation. That those emails that come once a month have the meeting scheduled, so everyone will know when the meeting is. It has the PowerPoints that are presented as well as the agenda. So if there is an item that you want to come to, you're welcome to come to that meeting. They're also going to be surveying members of the building committee to see if there's a better date and time. I know there's conflicts with many members on those Tuesday afternoons that they may be looking for another time to increase participation at those meetings. And then slide 10, just summarizing the benefits of the phases. Again, you have before you $910 million of state aid on a $1 billion plan, pre-K classrooms throughout the city, the engagement, and again, the opportunity to access new schools. I will end with this, that phase 4 does not have to be the final piece. I think there was some questions on like, well, what about someone who's not on there? As mentioned at the last meeting, you will have, at the conclusion of this, 20,000 new seats available. And based on the enrollment projections, 17,000 students. If the students come back, which is the goal, we will absolutely do it. There is nothing stopping the city council from starting on phase 5 on a future bond issuance or a future ballot. So the reason we do phases is for two reasons. Number one, it's financing. We want to make sure that if the money's not all needed at once, that the taxpayers aren't paying it. The benefit of this plan is that it's staggered in a very down to the dollar in a way that there is no tax impact for these projects over the next 7 or 8 years. We've structured, so I was shared at the last meeting. The other piece is swing space. You can't do all the work at once anyways. Even if we had 50 projects, let's say this district was huge. At the moment, we have 2 swing spaces that are available. And we are jostling, making this like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to find ways to do projects faster. We will continue to explore all avenues, but those are the 2 reasons why the phase 1 wasn't for $1 billion for all the schools, because we can't do them all at once anyway. So with that, if there are any questions, happy to address you.
I'm just going to if you don't mind. I think we expressed our concern earlier about how how upset we were that we were going to have to act in this short time frame on this kind of amount of money. I think we're all very, very supportive of the goal, providing access to new buildings for all students as a student by 2030. I mean, we absolutely agree with that. And I think part of it has been, I think, the lack of community engagement, our ability to interact. I know there's been a lot of talk about community meetings around the school projects, but we've heard about school closures that no one has been told about. We are, struggling now with our empty school buildings that are now being proposed to, release to charters. Where we very much want to, accept your, word that we are going to have community engagement around these buildings. We haven't seen it to date, honestly, and so I think, we've received, I know all of us have been receiving a lot of emails and concerns from our constituents that, this is going way too fast, despite the promises made in the past, we don't feel they can deliver on in terms of very, true community engagement and collaboration. So, well, I think we do want to, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone on our committee or the council. I think we very much understand why it is that we are here in this position today. We're not happy with it. And don't feel that our word, in terms of engagement with the community is being followed through. Even though we were saying it's going to be happening, it's very hard for us to understand how that is going to be when it hasn't happened in the house. So I'm just going to open the conversation. I would have appreciated in your graph on your page 4, page 5. So how much is each paid section? So I really would like to know how much. My understanding is that if we go through this in time by June 30th, we are looking at a reimbursement rate of 83%, is that correct?
80.2.
83.2.
80.2.
80.2.
Correct.
Okay. And then how much is the additional bonus, and are we guaranteed that bonus if we act by June 30th?
Yeah, so this is the final piece. The other documents they've been compiling, same as other districts. It's the same rules that we have. In order to qualify, you document all state and local approvals. You've awarded contracts, you've gone out to bid. The act of committing new projects means that you've started. The final piece, and the reason for that June 30th date, which was presented to this group in November, as well as in the city council resolution from December, it actually speaks to the June 30th, 2024 date. But the reason it's there is because that's the only way to document it started. In terms of the pie chart, so this is without interest. There's interest for this, the state's also picking up, so we can do both numbers. As like a rule of thumb, the interest, if we're lucky and you get 4%, we're looking at it's a factor of 1.42 times the 400 million. You can do the math now on what that is. I believe the bonuses are worth, with interest, 60 million. Without, it's 40. The energy savings, which is in light blue, is proportional to the debt service. In the language in the term sheet, it's about 2.8 million per year is the estimate. If there are better interest rates and your debt service is lower, then that number would be lower. And conversely, if the interest rates are higher at the time of issuance, their commitment to pay would actually be higher to districts. But in the pie chart, the light blue is represented again, 40 million project costs up to 60 million with including interest, which the state pays the vast majority of that as well.
Thank you very much. And just for clarification, I know that we passed that resolution in November, so you said.
Yeah, so there was a presentation so the timeline chart is the same one we've shown before. We just have been updating with the check marks and moving the arrow.
That's why I'm wondering, you don't have a team for approval.
Well, so you have just on the second check where the presentation on November 15th. We were here before the finance committee, I believe December 13th, they went through the full council and then on to the general assembly. So that resolution, which has been approved by the city council, references the end date of the June 30th. Like you would approve contracts by that date.
I do understand that, because what I'm saying to you is that we have not received this. We are now, that's November 15th, 2023. So now we're all against the wall to get this done, and maybe only 10% of the contracts. Now, so just referring to us approving it in November 15th is one thing, but not having anything to act upon until 2 weeks before the end of June is something that. So I'm just saying.
Agreed. Agreed. What is, I guess there's other pieces to this, such as going out to bid, which occurred in May, they have to put together RFPs, so part of it was. In an ideal world, could we be a month sooner perhaps, but based on the way this unfolded last summer with the General Assembly. This is likely the most optimal timeline to achieve this. Is it ideal? No. I will give you that, but it was a wormhole that came in that we were able to slip in and try to make this a reality.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit, is the reason that they went out in April is we had to wait until after February 15th. The stage 2 was submitted because we actually at that point had some documents that we could articulate and communicate to the bidders market. During that time period, in February, March, there were a lot of other projects that were bidding out there as well that would have competed against the market that we had here. So we held off through March, waited to see what those results are, because again, if there were a lot of contractors that were tied up with other contracts, we'd be very concerned about awarding to them. And during that process, we did get our approval, and got some feedback on the stage 2, so we had more information. And that process took a little bit longer through the RFP process as well.
Yes. One of my biggest questions is on the bond.
That's correct.
And I don't know what the rest of them, but if I'm reading the room. Now, we have these last meetings. I don't know if that bond is going to pass, so if it does not pass, what happens?
There will be no funding. There will be, so
No.
if the bond does not pass, there will be no funding.
Okay, so all this is,
But the approval that's being sought this evening is a necessary final step to preserve and protect the privilege of continuing construction projects should the bond pass at the November election.
there is no other. The one somewhere else to try to get it. To try to get this done.
Not with receiving the additional bonus points. Once again, that cannot be earned, generated, or permitted unless contracts are in place by June 30th. And then if we did do an alternative, it would not be by general obligation, which is voter approval. And voter approval is normally a more efficient method of borrowing. The interest rates are cheaper. We would then be subjected to go to the Public Building Authority, but then there are limitations on capacity that the Public Building Authority formula has different than general obligation bonding. Sure.
So we have the ability, it's the one that we passed in November, and we switched to the. Are we going to have any?
You will not have anywhere near 400 million. It's a very strict formula. It's based on 50% of the city budget, less existing Public Building Authority indebtedness, which includes the 135 million that's going to bond this summer for the CIP projects.
So you're saying
we would, and Ms. Grandy can attest also that when you borrow on the general obligation, you have the privilege of going to the General Assembly under Special Act financing, which permits you to borrow without exception to the cap.
correct. That was, if there was anything else.
If you were to borrow from the building authority, you would need council approval, the building authority approval, and you would be limited in the dollar amount that you could borrow based upon the formula and how much they already owe in existing and newly created debt that'll be issued this summer.
Sorry, Councilor Briggs, it's just, no, I'm just gonna go down and say, oh, but my thing is, since I need to put this top of but we needed this to bond and what for this to happen. Why are we using, you know, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. When things don't make sense, I'm like, what is going to happen? And the reason I say we need room, most people, I don't get calls. Everything about closure of the schools. The little tag sounds good and little fewer, but now people are starting to think the fewer means that you're closing their schools. So that you can open up a child and leave their kids behind. So fewer and fewer sounds good if we have the money.
guarantee. We don't have it. We don't have the money. So we're pretty sure that this means that, okay, well, we said we're gonna do this, but we're gonna still close the schools, so we're still closing. And our kids are gonna be left, and our teachers are gonna be left, and those people are gonna be left with pain again, and screaming and hollering, even though if you're talking to me, I'm not gonna close them. But, I'm having a big issue with problem with this, because I thought when the bond first came up, it was for this December date. What happened? When did that change? When did it change from December to June?
I'll defer to Mr. Moreno.
That was, last General Assembly session, moved the deadline as part of the budget that was approved for FY '24 from December 30th.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot get that.
The state budget last year included the bonus extension, so it was passed, I think it was June 20th, which moved the date from December 30th of 2023 to June 30th of 24. At that time, we didn't expect the bonuses to be extended, so there was no thought of even pursuing something so quickly, because if all we're dealing with is the base rate, we can get the base rate at any time. Because now it's extended, plans changed, and this was done in a way to have those two blue pie slices become available. Again, they don't have to be available. This could be on a different timeline. However, the pie likely becomes smaller because the city's payments go up because there's less state aid. That's the trade. The last thing I said, these don't have to be approved this month. They can be approved never a time. But the timeline has been prepared in the anticipation that you wanted to take advantage of these. We have done everything in our power to guide you through here. But this is for you to choose whether you want them. There's nothing more than that.
So. I know, what are the advantages? What, because I know this streams attached. What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages? Because the advantages I can see three things. They help and save. What are the other advantages?
So if you look at slide 6, many of these buildings are, for lack of a better word, some of them falling apart. They have things that we shouldn't be sending kids to some of these buildings. We need to give them better space. Look at the picture on slide 7. For those who've gone to debate, Fabiana, those buildings are amazing. Every kid should be in that type of building. There should be no exception. We should not be cutting lines. And that's our goal. Different goals, that's okay, but our goal is to do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it cheaper to repair?
No, it's, so one of the methods we've used here is the cost effective method. So the Swaziano building was not worth repairing. It was torn down, we built it again. Narducci was worth repairing. It was actually $25 million less to renovate. We're going to use that same lens in addition to all the input engagement to do the most cost-effective option for every building. Because that's the only way to make sure the money can go as far as it can. Otherwise, if we have some preconceived notions, they're all going to be repairs, are all going to be new. We actually may be spending much more than we could with an alternative version. So that's the overarching lens we are using for project selection. And that's the value of the design build team, because they have the option to go in any direction. Correct. Some of them are going to be bigger than they are now, but not some. Nathaniel Green might actually be smaller than it is now. Roger Williams might become smaller, where RFK might become bigger. However, as we go through this, if we do traffic studies, for example, and see that the density at RFK is too much, then that might be scaled down, and Nathaniel Green might be larger. That's a really large site. So there's still options for that. There's no set answer that they're all going to become larger or smaller. It varies by project and by site.
Like I said, I've been talking to so many people. I mean, even the people that I'm talking to parents, I'm talking to teachers, I'm talking to residents, I'm talking to so many different people, and my house, I didn't have to leave the box. And the reason I say that is because of the things that have been going on recently, with these closures, with these other things, people do not feel that we're doing for them. They feel like they're being shut up. They also feel that wasn't I'm speaking to, and that's retired, and when the mass has people, I speak to a lot, I don't speak to a lot of people. I don't know when speaking happens, but I'm speaking to them. So, and I just don't want us to go down this pretty spiral and then we do go end up going somewhere else, and we do have to pay higher interest as interest rate, because then it's gonna flow on the city, the residents in the city. Because I think if we went through all these designs, we're gonna try to help. And if we try to follow, we're gonna have to go down an avenue, and I don't think we're ready to go down. Because that building property, the public buildings thing, I'm afraid of. Because the interest rate is sky high still. You're gonna raise, and they have higher interest rates automatically because of one effective fund. Why don't we do this? Well, we're always trying for, you know, the city of Providence is always trying for. I guess we are a little bit, but we always, for the people, we don't have no money for this, that, and the other. If we could go down another avenue, it's gonna cost our citizens almost $5 billion. Who's gonna do it? I don't think who's gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? So, I know I hate to be the one that's saying doomsday this and doomsday that. I think there are some positives, but I think there's some negatives. I think there's some big negatives, especially when we're putting all our hopes and dreams on something that's amazing. I think we should have had that. So I will share. I have other questions. Well, I'm gonna first call on Councilor Randall.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond.
It's Kate, I'm so sorry. Would you like to respond?
So to the point that Councilor raises about who's gonna pay for it, let me first say, first of all, notwithstanding issues, you guys, the Providence School District, the intervention, the return to the city. Let me be clear, the buildings are owned by the city of Providence. They are our responsibility. We have no alternative. We have no choice. That's a heavy burden, not only in the work that is required, but the expense of it. This is not only once in a generation, this is once in a lifetime. If in fact the plan meets with the approval of all stakeholders to borrow a sum of money that would require virtually zero repayment, therefore zero burden to taxpayers. In all of my years in finance, that has never occurred. We have extolled the virtue of 82%. That's simply because, or 80.2%, simply because we are entitled to that as a distressed community. And nobody likes to carry the title of distressed community, but because of the distressed nature of our community, we earn a higher rate of return. If we were a community that did not have that designation, the normal reimbursement would be more likely 40%, perhaps 50%. It would be impossible to do any repair, rebuilding, or renovation. The fact that we're in that 82%, and one day I hope we never are, adding the 9% bonuses, and what made this program truly unique. Madam Chair, you recall, you had asked the question, so I put that back on record. Will there be a memorandum of understanding supporting the energy credits that will be given back to the city? And I had said in testimony on record, under oath, yes, it would be. And that agreement did get worked out, and I'm proud to say it was worked out by the collaborative effort of the city, RIDE, and the school district. So I say that with the bond issue. All of these matters before you cannot be operative, it cannot be enacted, cannot be paid until there is funding available. That cannot happen and should not happen and will not happen unless there is voter approval. And so if that gives any level of comfort, any assurance, I would beseech you to say, at a minimum, while you mentioned the phrase, put the cart before the horse, you heard from Mr. Carreno and Mr. DeSanti that it could not have happened any sooner. General Assembly approval, which is necessary to seek the Rhode Island Health and Education Building Corporation reimbursement on the bonds, did not actually get obtained until this week. with that said, it is putting this matter at its best and possible form. And I'd say that with the November approval, then we will be aligned. If it does not occur in November, then none of these contracts will take effect.
So, thank you. So first I have more of a, well, one, thank you for, I'm so excited. And I want to, I have a quick comment and then I have a quick question. The comment is I'd like to kind of like reframe how we've been talking about this. I 1000% agree that the timing is, not great. And also completely understand that this is not, this is the way that it's like, if the General Assembly can push back to 90, that would have been fantastic. I would have been so excited, but it isn't. And so if we want to get this through, this is the timing we have. And a lot of the decisions we make are so often the timing we just have to make better. And this $400 million, as we use volume talking about that into track, and backwards and stop using rental charter for private. Having state of the art wonderful buildings for kids to be in is something that like I would love for us to also learn. And if we don't do this now and we wait, because we could totally do this at another time. We lose that bonus, and that bonus is like an entire one of these projects for multiple projects. And I'm not willing to give up MLK. I don't know who's willing to give up one of their projects that they award. It's not me. Just to say. So we want to sign up, you know. But and I've heard from parents too with concern. I think there's been some misinformation shared in the community. There has also been a track record of not paying community engagement, and I'm excited to work with James and the RIDE team to make that not what's going forward. What happens? But I know that people are excited about having schools that they feel proud to send their kids to. You know, when I talk to neighbors, some of them work, many of my constituents work in schools, and they're embarrassed that sometimes the water isn't perfect, or the ceilings are falling down, or the curtains have asbestos. Like that's totally impossible. And if we can spend this funding, which will have virtually no impact on the taxpayers, to get to the problems, like I would just do that. And I 1000% agree. I hate having my back up against the wall and having to make decisions super fast. I take like 3 years to buy different pants. Because I just do not like to make fast decisions. But like, oh, stressed 10 years ago. But like, this is the moment where we kind of have to do that. So that is, I'm definitely voting yes, but I also have 3 questions. One is for the timeline, you know, if we pass this and it passes the voters, which I hear the concerns from the constituents, but also bonds have pretty overwhelming projects, so I'm hopeful that that continues. And I will work really hard to knock on lots of doors. That'd be the case here, that we need that. But assuming everything goes as planned, what's the general, do you have a sense of timeline for these projects? Are they like 28, 27, 28, like when will we see actual construction, demolition, things like that? Like what would it be about the process?
Yeah, so that's, I'll start and then anybody else could jump in, but we do have an overall timeline of them starting probably in 2026. But we are so early on that we have the ability to move projects one way or another, left or right, starting sooner, if there's a need to start sooner. We've talked about a lot, some of these buildings are deteriorating very quickly. So that might actually kind of tell us which one we have to start on first. But yeah, we have the ability to either start faster, slow things down if we have to, move the projects around. One of the key things, and Mario kind of touched on it, is swing space. We don't want to do construction in an active occupied building, so we want to identify swing space. That's going to be one of our biggest constraints on being able to do a lot of projects at the same time. But we also are continuing to look and identify if there's other swing space options available within the city.
Yes. The swing space question, and then we can just project more we use their sort of structure of things. Would they be a possibility? Charter, would they be a possibility for space to help us get extra capacity?
If Carl are available, it would probably shape years on this plan. So if this is even on the table, this would likely solve our swing space challenges for this. We are facing material escalation costs of 4% per year. That in the simplest terms, if you have had $5 5 years ago, you go to Starbucks and you can buy a large coffee. If you go today with the same $5, you buy a medium coffee. With some of these, with the existing swim spaces, we're looking at starting some of them in 2028, perhaps 29, like they're years out. The money is going to be the same, but you get is less. If we can expedite this, that building is set up to be a 2-family. We actually spent $1 million on it before it was taken away to make it a 2 cafeterias, 2 everything. That it could actually fit multiple things and likely can shave 2 or even 3 years of timelines. So if that is even a possibility, you likely will solve the missing piece.
And then, one last thing to look at is after the last meeting, I did speak with the Department of Sustainability energy stuff, which I know there's a separate energy conversations happening that kind of get completed. And they're totally open to having that conversation and meeting amongst all of us. So I haven't set them up yet because I just look at it, but I'll follow up on that. So I just wanted to not think I dropped that ball.
We are going to meet with, if you're interested, so there's the IRA money, there's so many strings to it. So we found a consultant. One of the other districts is meeting with them tomorrow. I'm going to join the meeting to see what they have to offer. It's Lincoln. But we're looking to then set up a meeting with them here because if they can bring 30% additional money from the federal government, it'd be crazy not to pursue all this. Assuming that meeting goes well, then we would loop in, so we would make that meeting perhaps with them so that we could do it all at one time.
And are we including our energy management in those meetings? We have sort of. Okay, all right, great. And then. All right.
Thank you folks for your information. Our first question is to our finance and maybe our bond council. Did we do an analysis? I think we would be able to move forward with these projects if we didn't receive additional reimbursement.
We would, it would be an impact and a strain to city cash. The 400 million was put into optimum condition on the premise of 100% reimbursement. So we have already done analysis on previous bond issues that have been approved and are waiting to be drawn upon, the 125 million and the 140. With the 400 million, there was no expectation of making any payment in order to keep within the debt service limits and the debt service payments that the city currently manages and for the next decade.
So I guess that was at 400 million. Did we like bring it down to like 300 million to see if that's something that we were? Did we just say 400?
Well, I should say we sized it on 400 million, but always on the premise of 0 repayment impact to the city budget. That it would always have the ability to receive the base payment, the bonus payment, the energy payment.
So I guess just from my understanding, without the 0 debt payment from the city, we wouldn't be able to. Well,
most likely though.
Anything
today, the current on 100 million, roughly speaking, based on today's money market, today's municipal borrowing rates, roughly 8 million for $100 million of borrowing. We do not have $8 million in additional capacity to meet that criteria on 100 million, let alone on 300 million or 400 million.
So the next question is in regards to messaging that we've been hearing around this. So we've heard that after phase 4, all the students will have access to like new or new schools, 20,000 seats. What I'm very confused about is how that doesn't include certain schools.
Yeah, so there are a handful who are not, again, this is the 4th phase. It could be a 5th phase. The reason we have done this is twofold. Number one is financing, but we can't go above this. So how many projects sit here? These are the ones we have. The swing space and timing is the other one, but then you have an overall need question. The moment you build a school, put bond funding into it, you have to keep it open for 20+ years. If something happens and those projections continue and you get below 17,000, and for some reason you say, you know what, let's close some of these buildings because we can't afford it, you would lose your reimbursement on the building. And rather than get 100% reimbursed, you put out zero, and it would wreck the books of the city. So it's done in a way that these are like, let's provide seats for the students that we know are coming with some wiggle room. Again, there's nothing that stops phase 5 from coming with new information in 2026. But again, based on the existing data, I mentioned this last meeting, in 2003, 2004 school year, there were 27,000 students in Providence. We are at 19,000 this year and projected to lose 500 per year over the next 5 years. Like, there's kids that are no longer here in the city of Providence, and we shouldn't build 27,000 seats when there's only less. That doesn't mean, again, we can build more buildings. In a few years, we will have more information. If there's a desire to do George West, a brand new George West, whether you have the students or not, and you want to put a bottom ballot, it's absolutely can be done. So I'm not saying can't be done.
I understand that, sir. But what I'm really concerned about, I guess, is that we're unintentionally, maybe intentionally, setting certain schools to, I mean, this period was really possible. Our finances are only in the time, so I don't see us taking out a bond phase 5 the next day. It's not on the table, even 100 million. Yeah, we're gonna get to the point, and that's really good information regarding schools construction using bonded money can't be closed. So essentially, all the schools that we're investing in are should the financially responsible thing would be to keep the doors open for 20 years. So what we have seen in the past is investment allocated to certain schools. I use Carvalho, for example, there was certain money supposed to be invested towards it. It didn't happen. Enrollment kept decreasing, the building kept deteriorating, and then the common sense choice, the tough choice, whatever choice you want to call it, was to close it, and that's where we're at now. So, and I bring this up, Georgia West, I have one school in my ward, it's Georgia West, it's the one neighborhood school. And I wouldn't just be bringing it up just out of nowhere. I'm bringing it up because in September at some point, we received a PowerPoint that included Georgia West. And from my understanding, maybe this is new information, was Georgia West included to the RIDE application in December?
So in November, we presented, we had a myriad of possibilities. Those projects were vetted through the consultants, the building committee to narrow down what came forward. But George West was not included as part of the stage 2 zone. Through this committee that involved including members of the city, members of the city council, community members of the district, picked the final list, which came forward to RIDE. Well, first to the city council, which got approval on February 1st, approved by the mayor on February 9th, when it came to RIDE, did not include George West.
So somewhere in December, November, there would be building committee public notes where Georgia West was discussed to not be included.
Baseball is discussed.
Yeah, so I think that as they went, the consultants went through the process of identifying facility needs, enrollment projections. We could look at that list, and George West might have been school number 9, right? And we picked the first date. That certainly could be. I really can't recall right now. We certainly go back and review that information, but yeah, it definitely was on the list at one point, as were a couple other schools. But as we further refined that list and reviewed facility conditions, enrollment projections, and other criteria about area to build in, how much investment has already been put into the school, those kind of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, but my concern is where can someone from the public access where that decision was made?
I would have been at any of the building committee meetings. All those decisions about the list and what gets submitted at stage 1, stage 2 are discussed and determined at the building committee.
The school building committee, I've heard many times counselors are involved. I'm not sure we have that counselor involvement. Are there any counselors supposed to be attending or not attending, or who is attending these meetings when it happens?
I think there are counselors that do attend. I'm not sure if they attend on a consistent basis.
I don't think that's.
James may know better about.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm just saying, that one of the things we're to say, we have not had council on these meetings. And so we really would like to know, again, these decisions are very important for us to understand. So that we can communicate to our constituents on how those decisions are made, is all I'm gonna say. And are you attending the school, they're at the same time?
Yeah, they're,
I mean, we haven't. So I'm just addressing the fact that we don't have representation. So, anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead. Now, for this.
Yeah, no, Kyle has attended and he does share information. This is where I'm talking about how Ward 6 was included in it. And I mean, I don't want to say 100%, but I'm 90% sure that there's no building committee meetings that show Ward 6 being moved out of phase 4. And I mean, I think what's sometimes kind of confusing is there's stages and there's phases, right? There's two different things that we're talking about here. So just to make that clear. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna be here 10 years watching these schools, which is great for one neighborhood school in my ward. It's not gonna be newly renovated. Enrollment is gonna decline most likely going forward. With a lot of movement by PPSD, by the mayor's office, by RIDE to expand charter schools, which is I think something that needs to be said in an open public setting. It's very contradicting to say that enrollment for PPSD is gonna increase when there's a lot of support to increase charter seats, which I mean, those are whatever opinion you have on the situation, it's just numbers game at that point. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable supporting this without the one in the school and my board being left out. If there was information here in front of me stating exactly how that happened, I think I would be a little bit more understanding. But I'm not gonna do a disservice to my community members that put me in this position, and I hope that fellow counselors understand it and respect where I'm coming from, because I think most folks here that are champions of the neighborhood will have a very similar opinion. And so that said, that's my biggest concern with this, not necessarily the timeline. I understand timeline sucks, is not ideal for anyone. But as a Ward 6 counselor, that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know Brian did an assessment a few years ago about the need across the district. What was that number to make all schools warm, dry, and completely renovated?
Statewide in 2017 was $3 billion.
In the city, it was it 1.3 billion?
It was just, yeah, and we did a reassessment back in 2022, and it was about just under $1 billion then. So at this point, with the escalation numbers, you're well over $1 billion.
And those warm,
well, just a little bit better than warm, safe, and dry to make them more closer to 21st century learning. But yeah, a little around $1 billion.
Yeah, so I think that's important to put in perspective. So there's over $1.3 billion need, and that's only rising with the cost of construction and interest rates. There's still a lot of need in our home schools. So if we don't pass a $400 million bond, we're just allowing more schools to become dilapidated. I know we have a lot of concerns about charters to lower, but if we don't act on this tonight, we would be enabling that to continue. So I think it's to the council and Amberwell's point, I mean, it's really important to put that in perspective. And even if we do get to this, additional 400 million, it's going to be a lot more need out there. So that could be an additional phase. The 91% reimbursement rate that we're leveraging here, that's gonna go away, right? The General Assembly is not extending that. Yeah, but altogether, it's 91%, right?
On the current rate.
So, I mean, that's critical. And I can't think of the last time, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, where there's been a bond, a public school bond in the city of Providence that has failed.
I can't recall that.
So it sounds like, I will certainly not fire a single door on me, but too, this is really about our kids and them having 21st century facilities that they can go to school. So, I hear some points being raised, but I think it is critical that we get this done. And if we do this, it might open up additional capacity in the future for us to do projects, considering the fact that this is going to be at no cost for our taxpayers. So I just kind of want to state that for the record. But with regards to just quick question, so there is concern about we've been experiencing this recently. We've heard from a lot of parents that they're very concerned about the imminent closures of some of our school buildings for charters. If we were able to utilize, let's say, Carl as a swing space, can you speak to how that would accelerate these projects, but also make this significantly cheaper in the long run?
I mean, any swing space that would help us by either moving the children out, so not doing a phased occupied approach like we're doing over at Classical right now, which is extended that project out. And every day you're there, you're paying for staff to be there, you're paying for other dumpsters, all that cost, right? That adds up. And it extends the construction timeline. So there's a real interesting calculator if you go on the federal government that it's called an inflation calculator. And I went there just recently, and you could only put up to $10 million in there. And you could only go out for a couple of years. I put in that the project was awarded or approved in 2019 for $9.5 million. Calculator came back 5 years later. That project now will cost you $11.5 million in that 5-year period. So time works against you. So anything we could do to move the projects faster by having either kids out of the building, which is a safer and better approach anyways, and empty those buildings so that we go in there and accelerate the timeline like we're doing over at Pleasant View right now, for example, that ends up and results in actually savings. And those savings could be used to do something at other projects at the same time.
And so the school that was recently utilized, so theoretically, it could be used as a swing space, right?
The last year of Laura, because it was so under enrolled, we were able to, that summer before, move debate. So we actually swung debate in there, half the building, and then the Carl Laurel School took the other half. But it's set up for 2 schools, 2 450, 2 4. But they're all in the Nathaniel Green could move there while it's being done. Like it holds even a huge middle school. So it has a lot of flexibility where you can do a big project or 2 at once. But we would go twice the speed with that one. It's vacant now. I mean, one of the exercises of the jigsaw puzzle was finding swing space. There's one extreme where we can start creating some space, which I think is one that we want to avoid, where we have to find buildings, and there's one where there might be buildings that are vacant now that actually would be perfect for this, that may have become available or may soon become available, that would solve a lot of these challenges.
So I think that shades off both time and money, and potentially more capacity to think about additional projects in the future. So I think this is a no-brainer, but I'm going to keep my time and bring it back to the
Council Peters, thank you. I have just comment on that question. About her. I just want to thank you. So a lot of the conversation started, and really came from a moment of pause for my constituent and my constituent work, because we have projects potentially in here. in here. And a lot of the concern, that we've seen in the last few days really has been already, the discussion started with the community, and I think one of the things that we have done really well, is that you have engaged, that the PPSD has engaged me to a point where I have been able to very often and very loudly say, this needs to be done with a lot of community engagement. There's an entire list of questions and concerns, not only from the parents and the children and the teachers, but also the community surrounding it. So as we really project this out, I just want to thank you because it just, all of this can happen very in tune with a community meeting yesterday where PPSD officials came out and really did talk and help my some of the parents that were there engage in understanding what the community engagement process will look like or should look like. With that being said, I do have a couple of quick questions because my my constituents are talking about it today. One of the questions that came up was if RFK had this really high level of need for replacement, why wasn't it chosen first as opposed to like in the fourth phase of what these projects? What's one of the things, because I can tell you all, and again, you're going to ever walk through, or would like to take a walk through RFK, I would like to show you exactly where it's going to every single day. There's pain feeling in the rack. I mean, I can continue on and on and on, but we just, our kids deserve better, all of our kids. Full stop. But I did want to ask that because that is a question that came up after.
Yeah, and I could talk a little bit about, first of all, I apologize for not being there. I've been at previous
You've
meetings.
been at other.
Yeah, I have. I think that the selection process might have changed. I think the criteria did. I know prior to us getting involved in 2019, it was about replacing roofs, warm, safe, dry, right? And I think as we came in and kind of changed the focus on, you're going into a building, touching a building, doesn't make sense to spend $2 million on one side of the roof and then come back 2 years later and do the other side. Additionally, I think our 2022 reassessment of the building did a deeper dive into those buildings and recognized how poor of condition some of these facilities were in. And 5 years had gone by too, or even more. I think those were 2017. And those buildings continued to deteriorate. So some of the buildings, the condition assessment, went through the roof because over a 5-6 year period of time, whether it's mechanical systems started failing, the water that we keep seeing going inside of these buildings with all the flooding that's occurring, you're seeing these buildings deteriorate more and more and more. I think that just changed how RFK maybe went up the list because it was very clearly identified as a facility that was in very poor condition and in need of replacement.
My follow-up question is kind of cooperative. The projects for RFK specifically state $78 million. However, when another person that came up yesterday, when I sent the facility assessment from 2022 to my constituents that were really trying to understand where we had gotten to that number. The facility assessment for RFK came up to a little less than $30 million. So the question was, the process of thinking kind of was some sort of discussion or engagement has already been had to then project a number for RFK, and the feedback that was presented was we haven't been engaged in that part. And in an effort to try and quell some of that concern, I'm wondering if we would be able to explain why the project number here, we think it's not saying that I'm winning. And anyway, but why is it higher? And incurring the cost of the inflation and things of that nature, I wanted to understand to be able to explain it to
Yeah, so how we look at putting budgets together, moving after the phase one, the 2019 projects, right? Those, I call those the legacy projects. Moving forward, we make sure that when those projects are developed, that we follow the RIDE guidelines. They will pay us X number of dollars per student, right? Per square footage. So that develops kind of what their guideline is, and we stay within that, if at all possible. We make sure that there's brand new furniture there's brand new technology, there's security, there's testing, there's commissioning. All of our projects now are trying to be net zero, and we have to follow Northeast CHIPS, which is an energy guideline of 3.2 with RIDE. We actually follow 4.0, which isn't even enhanced, because we know that it's going to translate to a more energy efficient building. So the buildings we build are based on not only today's dollars, but we also escalate them further out, because we know that these buildings aren't going to be built for a couple more years. But we want to make sure that there's enough funding there, proper contingencies, the abatement and demolition of RFK, for example, and potentially housing of swing space for those children too. We have to allocate some dollars for that as well.
Thank you very much. Councilor, this is more of a plea on my part for my to do it here, kind of making this decision. My community came out robustly thanks to the rally of a few individuals that are really concerned about what's happening here. And I'm actually very thankful that it happened because of the fact that it did point out just how much the families that are being able to have this opportunity. An opportunity like this on the table is not something that comes very often that we come through. And again, I want you all to come through and take a walk with me so that you can see what the kids in my community are expecting. I very much believe that not allowing us an opportunity or any of these big schools an opportunity to have this scalability so that we can do all of this and give our kids the needs. It goes against we are all very much heavily invested in making sure that our kids, that our students thrive in every possible way. We've proven that with some of the roles that we've taken recently and some of the conversations that we've had. I think it's not prudent of us to sit and push and advocate so hard to get PPS money and then say, no, we're not considering $1 million. I understand all of everything around it, and it's my job as a counselor in my community to advocate and make sure and ensure that there's a ton of engagement around this, and that is something that I have said at the very beginning. That would happen for my school, but it is very easy to consider that we shouldn't an opportunity of leverage. So I'm advocating for my community, I'm advocating for the team that the parents over at RFK. This is a shot for us to be able to get something that we haven't had in almost 7 years. So that's the thing. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can understand some of the most 90 people that cannot stand back in government, and I am not going to support the finances. However, fully experts, but the representative for Ward 10, I don't know what the right to celebrate or act. Be happy with that. The reason why I say that is because all the schools here are actually minority, especially super happy that I'm getting an upgrade. But I'm also concerned that they've been elected for so long. That's why I'm here. Right in the middle school, $95 million. That one helps me for the transition that the kids that are attending are understanding. So I am glad that this is being taken into consideration. How can I walk away from 4 months school being now we doing a good job in particular. But I'm also concerned, and at the same time, I have a feeling for confidentiality for his student, particularly at the young class. I will be as concerned as he is. But I think that my strategy would be not to turn it back on $400 million or to stop it at this level. but perhaps to get work in, and getting more funding. The solution is to bring more money in, so we can do all the schools, and that is not there. So, you know, the past is that we need to immediately develop a second strategy here, where we get more funding, so we can do the rest of the school. And as far as the bonding in November, I'm very confident that it would pass. Every time we ask for funding for school, taxpayers come on, vote come on, and they used to nurse the whole. So, having said that, I'm looking forward to this, because I think our kids deserve better. And this is a step moving forward to ensure that they get the very best that we can give to them as a regular official, as well as government. Excellent.
I'm gonna call you after I let everyone speak. I'm sorry. Okay. I raised something earlier ago, and I'll add it to do. What was that? Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the, so we have an MOU draft that is, energy agreement that we agreed on. Is that what you're referring to, or? Well, I was completely past the breaks. I too am going to support, well, I am going to support, this evening. I am very interested in exploring the possibility of, possibly, putting the terms of our ongoing communications in that on it. And I don't know if that's a possibility. I mean, some of it was mentioned this evening. I would very much like to have an agreement between council and PPSD and RIDE as to how we're going to be communicating and engaging in a collaborative way moving forward on this project. So I guess I was going to ask if that might be a possibility for us to work out a written agreement between us as to how this might happen.
I think it's an excellent idea, given the concerns.
I would say from a bonding point of view, it's an excellent idea. It's a good thing to do. The one thing you need to be careful of is not to put any conditions precedent or conditions subsequent that would affect the ability of bond counsel to render the opinion or the validity of the bonds. So you can agree to whatever protocols, reviews, procedures you want, so long as you also include some language that says this doesn't affect the issuance of the bonds or their validity.
I would very much like to explore that. But you certainly give me some comfort level. You know, in terms of that, we also cannot hold up what we are planning to do now. But if we could have an agreement with you that we could work on something jointly in writing that our councilors can participate in, that really does put in writing what our expectations are, and I think we want to collaboratively together. So I think that it's a point for you and us to be able to work collaboratively and speak to our community as well.
Agreed, and perhaps the term sheet is the proper approach. That was very successful for the revolving fund that was created. Hopefully, it'll be the same approach for the energy MOU, that we would do something, we would put it together a term, we would agree on the terms, and then you get legal counsel to actually write it out. We're happy to take a first pass, or vice versa. We'll take the first pass, send it out for commentary, and we can absolutely we'll do that.
Yes, certainly we can make it through to I, Councilor Grace, I'm sorry. No. I feel that we need that. Because I have to do this. However, we have heard time and time again about how we are putting these kids in school. Yes, one. We did 8 schools. What about the rest?
What about the rest of the students? What about the rest of the parents? What you know that rest of that? I don't think it's fair. You're gonna be jumping in. This is a good idea if we get the one. I want something to be ready, and if you don't get the one, you gotta do something. We have to have something down and showing them that we are ready for all of our students. All of the kids, not just the ones in our area, not just the ones that my kids, my kids go to that school that I'm hoping. Because to me, all these schools are bad. We knew for decades we let them down. All these decades we have been letting them down. But if we're only gonna take care of 8 schools, we're still letting down too many more. And the other thing is that it's bigger to be honest, and I keep saying and I keep on saying. This may sound like, okay, well, it's not what I, you could have came back to us in February or whatever date it was and said, okay, we're having issues with, we don't know how long it's gonna be. Can we extend this? Or can we figure out a way that we can do this? Let's work together. I'm getting sick and tired of being put in the same position. We only got 30 days, we gotta get it done now. I consider this to do now, get the orders in to rubber stamp everything that comes back, and that's what we're doing. Well, we wait till the last minute, and then we have no other choice but to vote on something. I don't like that, I don't appreciate it, I don't think like the people watching like it. It's like you don't really, and I'm keeping yours a little bit shorter than some, a little bit better than some of the others. We know beforehand what's going to happen. Give some common courtesy to us and to the people of Providence. I am sick and tired of having to come back and say, oh, well, yeah, we have to go through this, we have to do this, we have to do that. You do an MO, you do an MOA, whichever way you want to do it. At least we have something in here saying that we tried to work out something. Yes, we got back to this, but we tried to work out something. So we don't wait until it's starting here. If we don't start doing this, there's no sense in us coming here. We just wait until it's time to come and go up stand around and go on our business. Because we're here Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday. We're here morning, noon, and night. We are suffering trying to get this through. And yes, I want to sit down, composite it's over there. I'm doing the same thing. But it's nerve-wracking. And it's not fair. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to anybody from the table. We need to get our acts together. And if we can't get it in a certain amount of time, we need to come and say, look, this is not going to happen. There's a reason why. I'm gonna send something, can you send something out to your community so they don't know what's going on? So that they're not snapping face when we have to do this thing again. And believe me, don't get me a rough stand out. Because I'm not gonna be doing it. And it will be no way, no how, don't even look at it. Because this is ridiculous. That's all. I'm great.
So a few things. 36 years ago at Lima, Providence, by that. And I don't think we didn't go over this a little bit. I just want to tell you, 36 years ago, and after I left the fire department, I became a councilman. And people ask me, why did you become a councilman? And I said, because of everything that I heard when I worked in the fire department, it's true. And that's no fault anything. But the fire station was falling apart, there's no fire 36 years. There's only one station, right? As far as, and 28,000. But as far as the other stuff, a couple weeks ago, we had a meeting, we had a public hearing. Everybody's out there with these lake charters, that don't like charters. It's saying, charter schools, we invite us, then we hear the parents come in and say, we want $20 million, we got $5.5 million. Now we're looking at 400 million. And I don't think it's gonna, even if it doesn't pass, it doesn't hurt us. But how do we come back to our constituents and say, listen, we didn't give you $20 million here. But then we voted against the $500 million, and we didn't know if it passed. So even if it doesn't pass, we heard tonight that it's just, I understand, it's a weeks or a year, online, but that's not passed away. But the Smalley's public schools in Providence, this list is 18. So it's almost half the list that we get. I understand the councilman says, well, my school's not in there, which I kind of don't understand that, because it's a little late, and that school is 100 years old, so it's there. Well, coincidentally, tomorrow, all this is coming out, and tomorrow, that's the Reservoir Avenue School, is 100 years old. That's not on the list. And the problem. But can I say no, just because that's not on the list? No, I'm gonna be hopeful that there's more money down the road for us to try to get that school up. Because you got, George City, that's 108 years old, Robert Kennedy's 104, Resident Hill is 199. The Daniel Green's 95, Rockland's Middle School is 92, and MLK is 57. So you can't look at, I don't go to the schools, I don't know what they are, what's wrong with them. But what I'm kind of saying is I don't think you can say no to $400 million bond when it comes up. And I don't know about you, but I think most people, I do. If you're doing a check, they go wrong. They don't even know. I mean, we had the what you call the we try to save the pension. And that passed. So everybody said, oh, it's not pass, it's not pass, it's not pass. It passed. So don't go by everything you hear from the past. But after that, I mean, that's kind of where I want to go with it, but I just think you can't say no.
Motion made by Councilman Taylor, seconded by Councilman Taylor, all in favor, aye, all opposed. 3-2. I appreciate, I'm just gonna say, I appreciate everyone's presentations always. I appreciate the offer to do the analysis on our engagement report. But I also appreciate all the council for the public comments. Very, very good discussion. I appreciate everyone's opinion. Thank you all very much for hanging in there for these past 20 months for our road has been. I appreciate the fact that my community members and the councilors have been pulling hard and I'm going to make sure that of course our work.
I'm a little of that mom didn't have the baby.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, and on behalf of the administration, particularly in support of the ordinances that were passed out of committee tonight, with furtherance of consideration for the FY25 budget, we thank you so much for the work that was done. The cooperation. I want to give the primary credit to Sarah Silveria.
Everything good.
And we appreciate all the work that went into it. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Now I guess we have a little something for a little and where they went. You're making it.
Oh, we're gonna be all night.
That happens, I just want to.
Yeah.
I'm not even more than 3 hours. Thank you. I mean, you did a great job.
Yeah.
And everybody that read all of this. This is what I president.
Yeah.
You wrote it out.
Yeah.
Everybody that. Committee members, this committee. This is how it works.
Thanks, Greg.
I like to make the most of it.
All right.